We are live. We are live. Welcome everybody to the Stone Crow Virtual Pub. I'm absolutely delighted to have Fergus Fitzgerald, the head brewer of Adnams Brewery, joining me tonight at the Stone Crow Virtual Pub. How are you doing, Fergus?
I'm good, Simon. I'm good. It's nice to see you. It's been a long time since we spoke. A long time.
It has. It felt like a really long year, hasn't it? But
yeah,
we won't drag the mood down too early in the night.
No.
I'm going to be kicking off tonight with a bottle of your Adnams Salford Kobold English Lager, 4.7% ABV, 500 milliliter bottle. There's the bottle cap quickly. The camera wants it. There we go.
Yeah.
But as always, as I'm opening this beer, I want everybody to hit the like button. We want 100 likes. Let's hit the like button. Let's make this stream a record-breaking stream tonight. So we want 100 likes. Hit the like button down below. I'm just going to go quickly over to... So hit the like button down below. We want 100 likes. We've got 18 so far. I can see we've got 18 likes. It's really good. Really, really good. So 18 to start with. I can see we got about one saying... Well, about 65 people in already within 2 minutes of starting.
Yeah, you started early.
We have started early. We really have. So 65, we've got 20. We just picked up another 10 likes. We're up to 28 likes. Come on, hit that like button down below. I really want to get in to talking with Fergus about this beer. I want to sip the beer, but we want to get it. We want to get it to 100 likes. We've got 31 so far. Fergus, can you see the chat down the side on the stream?
I can't at the moment. I probably haven't pressed the right button.
There's on the top right. It says comments.
No, I can't see that.
Oh, is it top left or top right?
I can see it now.
Brilliant. So you got all the. We got all the comments up. So these are live. Everyone's saying well done on the haircut. I haven't had my haircut.
You do it yourself, Simon.
Well, it looks like, doesn't it? I hope my barber's not watching. 43 likes. Okay, we'll crack on for a minute. Simon's had a fight with a lawnmower. We got 86 people tuned in. Let's crack on then. We'll get the likes up to 100 a little bit later on. So, Fergus, introduce yourself. Adnams Brewery. I mean, one of the, for me, a real quality regional brewery. Can I call you a regional brewery?
Yeah, you can call us that if you like. Yeah.
Is that? I mean, it's. Well, people put in brackets, don't they?
Yeah, everyone likes to stick something in a box. Yeah, so yeah, we're a sort of family-owned brewery, really, sort of based in Salford, which if you've no idea where that is, it's sort of halfway between Norwich and Ipswich, and then hit the coast. So the view out my window is a lighthouse, and just around the corner is obviously the sea. So it's not a bad place to be at all. So Adnams has been brewing since 1872. The short history is that two brothers, George and Ernest, bought the brewery that was already on site, and the brewery that was on site is called the Sobey Brewery, and that goes back about 350 years. They bought the brewery in 1872. Ernest stayed and ran the business, and then George emigrated to South Africa. And we tell people on the tours he got eaten by a crocodile because that's what we were told. It might not be 100% true, but we'll leave it where it is because we bought a big giant crocodile for the tour centre now, so it's too late to go back in the story. We'll stick with that. So obviously it's changed a lot since 1872, so it's a relatively modern brewery. And we also put in a distillery in 2010. Yeah, where we have a distillery on site as well. So yeah, it's a really good brewery to work at, and I think we've changed quite a lot over the last 10 years since probably we last spoke. I think Simon was probably 10 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, we got our first super chat of the night from Alan Mead. Happy Tuesday, Ferg. Hi, Fergus. Looking forward to this. And we got somebody then, Jim Pov, saying he's drinking the Ghost Ship tonight. So sorry to interrupt you, Fergus, but we're drinking.
Yeah, so this is our lager. So it's not out long. So we launched it sort of. Well, the plan was to launch it in the summer in sort of pubs. That didn't quite work out because a lot of pubs were shut for what we're calling the situation. I think we've agreed to call it the situation.
Yeah.
So we don't hit any trigger words for YouTube. The situation this year wasn't ideal, but it's a sort of all English lager. So all English malted barley, English hops. So we use some Goldings in there. We do use our yeast, which I think is a bit controversial because it's obviously not a straightforward lager yeast, but we wanted something that had a characteristic of Adnams. So for most of what we do, we have a house yeast, and it gives us a house character. And some people like that, some people don't. But for me, it makes us a bit unique. And whether you can't be a bit unique, I know, but it makes us unique because we use this yeast, and it gives us that character to all our beers that we use that yeast in. So we like the fact it gives a bit of Adnams character to it. So I think it's got a nice fruity nose, a bit of cereal to it, but it's clean, quite dry.
Yeah, absolutely. It really lovely aroma. Oh, I needed that, and. You definitely get a little bit of that. I suppose it's almost like a hybrid of Lighthouse, which is your light ale, but of course you put in lager malts.
Yeah.
But you definitely get that kind of that lovely ale yeast coming through. Now, tell us about the lagering process. Did you have to buy special kit to lager the beer?
But if you go back when we first spoke 10 years ago, Adnams was a pure cask beer brewery, really. So open fermenters really was the only thing we had on site. But about 3 years ago, we started putting in some conical vessels and some bright beer tanks, and actually to expand out of that. So we've now got proper conical lagering tanks. And I think the thing for me is it sort of still has that character, but it's probably more, if you're familiar with Kolsch's, that sort of German cross between lager and ale. So this probably fits more in there, but I think we've chosen not to call it that because most people, I think, don't really know what a Kolsch is.
No, so like a fruity.
Yeah, so we've called it a lager because that's sort of what it tastes like. So that's what we're going with. And yes, Alan, I am from Ireland.
Alan Mead is from Ireland himself. Alan Mead is the Irish craft beer guy on Instagram, and he's been a fantastic follower of our live streams and videos since the very beginning. We got another super chat by Pimp My Sniper. Have a nice Tuesday drink, lads. We certainly will. Oh, we got Beers of Europe in tonight as well. Good evening, Simon and Fergus. Hello, Beers of Europe.
Yeah.
Sorry, Fergus. Whilst we're talking tonight, if you're interested in any of the beers that me and Fergus are talking about, there's two options to order the beer. I put a link in the description box of this video for our channel sponsor, beersofeurope.co.uk. You can order the beers from beersofeurope.co.uk, or if there's a couple of the speciality beers, we got a Beaverton beer that I was sent today. I did an Instagram live, opening boxes everywhere. We got sent a load of beer from you guys. So absolutely, Beers of Europe or the Adnams website to order the beer. This is fabulous. And what I like about, of course, you wanted to launch this in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
It's the ideal lawnmower beer, isn't it? Or afternoon barbecue. Barbecue.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Yeah. Hopefully you don't have to mow your lawn too much, but yeah, if you have to, then a few quick breaks in between with some lager is probably ideal.
Do you? We're both kind of. Well, we have to be with the industry we're in. We're both very used to traveling around and it's just a question just popped into my head now. Has this current situation, as I like to call it on the channel, are you really pining for the beer festivals and getting out there and traveling and do you miss that this year in 2020?
Yeah. I think actually one of the things I really missed this year was the sort of trip. So usually we go out and we select hops from the sort of hop harvest. So the trip out to Yakima and sort of Washington State that's a sort of highlight of the year, really. So missing that year was quite painful. So yeah, and just being able to go and see other breweries. So we've got friends obviously in other breweries that we'd love to go and see their places and have a chat and have a proper beer with them rather than over Zoom. I think, this is lovely, Simon, don't get me wrong, but doing it virtually is not quite the same thing. So like everyone else, we all want to go and hug our friends and have a proper beer with them, but we have to make do with what we've got at the moment. Yeah.
I'm just like you say, it's almost not took it for granted, but it was always a given. It was always a given that we travelled. Yeah. It was it's especially in the summertime. It's part of what we. It's part of part of the industry, isn't it? Is to meet your brewer friends and different countries and drinking beers. And let's just hope next year, 2020 will be 2021 even will be a little bit better in that respect.
It'll definitely be better, but I think the whole point of beer is to bring people together. It's about marking those celebrations and those sort of commiserations. It is about people, and it's nice to sit down and enjoy a beer, but actually the best thing about beer is when you sit down with your friends and talk rubbish for 2 hours. That's the best thing about it.
On your favourite bar stool, and that sort of thing. I'm going to say we got 72 likes. We've got 187 people in. It's 190 people coming in now, but we want to boost that. We want 200 people tuning in tonight. So that's 72 likes. Can we get it to 100 likes? Can we do 100 likes? Hit the like button down below. This is a fabulous beer. I've seen it advertised quite a lot over the last few months, and I thought that's a beer that I really want to get hold of. And it's a really, really good lager. Really good lager. It reminds me of a Kolsch. Definitely reminds me of a Kolsch. Yeah. That cross between ale and
it's got that slightly more fruit tones to the sort of the nose on it. So a bit exactly like you'd expect from a Kolsch. So I think we're pretty happy with how it's come out. Like every beer, you're always tweaking though. No beer is ever finished. Tweaking something a little bit.
I got a £5 super chat. Thank you very much, Neil. Long time follower of the channel. Evening, Simon and Fergus. I was really impressed with your Jack Brand New England IPA. It was delicious. I remember this very moment. Neil Long was telling me you need to get a certain shop and pick up this New England IPA. I've actually got a can. Yeah, I've got a can, and I will be. That'll be on the channel. That'll be reviewed on the channel because I've only got the one can and I really want to get it on the channel. Just for Neil Long. So thank you very much, Neil Long, for that. We got quite a bit. We got quite a bit to get through, haven't we, in terms of the beer? So I'm wondering whether Lighthouse will be. I've got a few glasses in front of me, so I can kind of alternate between a few.
So we can't tell when you finish them or not.
So I've got a bottle of Adnams Lighthouse here. It's a 3.4% ABV beer. I remember reviewing this again. It would have been about 10 years ago when I had a box of beer from you guys. And I remember enjoying it, but I want to just see how close was I with whether I can really taste that Adnams yeast. That's what I'm trying to say between the lager and the ale. I find that quite a lot with breweries, Fergus, where they, as a brewer, and I suppose it's a great question for yourself, is it nice that you've got a really flexible yeast and you feel very confident that you can use it in a stout or a porter or your Broadside or your Lighthouse or now your Kobold lager?
I think so. So our yeast, without, I don't know how technical you want to get, Simon, but our yeast is actually two different yeast strains, which is not uncommon for sort of older sort of English breweries, I guess. So because it's two strains, it actually takes a lot of managing to try and keep them balanced. But the benefit of there being two strains is you can sort of get lots of different flavors on them, so you can play slightly different tunes on them, using different temperatures across the process, having slightly different sort of fermentable sugars can give you lots of different flavors. So it can be a right pain to work with, and we spend a lot of time basically making sure the yeast is happy on the sort of understanding that if the yeast is happy, it makes good beer.
Yeah,
which generally works out to be true. And then I probably bore people a bit on tours. But essentially, a lot of the job in the brew house and the fermentation room is just actually making sure we grow happy yeast. And if we do that, we tend to get good beer out at the end of it.
Sorry, go on. I was interrupted. It's the very beginning of the process, really. If you look after, it's a bit like me being a carpenter. If you fit the line in right, then you're going to hang the door, and the door's going to fit properly. You know, it's that. So it leads into making your job nice and easy.
It makes it much easier if you can keep the yeast happy. Everything else tends to work pretty well. But although it takes a lot of work because it is 2 strains, actually it does mean we've got a bit of flexibility. So we do use other yeast strains from time to time for some beers. So we will bring in a lager yeast strain if we want a very clean tasting lager. So for the dry hop lager, we use a lager yeast. We'll use a saison yeast if we're trying to get a saison. If we're trying to do a Weiss beer, we will use a Weiss beer yeast because some of those flavors we can't get. But it gives us a lot of choice with the yeast we've got. I wouldn't, there are days when you want to throw it out the door, but most of the time it works really well.
I got a question here from Paul's Beer Reviews. And he said, Ghost Ship has got to be the most improved beer I've had over the last couple of years. Love the stuff now after not being too sure beforehand. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's sort of a backhanded compliment, I think, isn't it, Paul? So it used to be shit, but now it's all right.
But he's Paul's he's another YouTuber who reviews a lot of beer. But I remember when it first came out, Ghost Ship. And I remember it blowing my mind. How many years? 6, 7 years?
So 10 years old this year. So
is it?
Yeah. I know. And I can't work out if that's really old or really young. It's sort of somewhere between, but I can't really work out. It seems a really long time, but on the other hand, I can remember putting the recipe together. It doesn't seem that long ago.
It's amazing. It's amazing because. So was that your first beer then that you were kind of in charge of with Adnams then? I can't remember. Core beer, sorry.
Definitely core beer, but like most beers, I think it started off as a seasonal beer. So I took over as head brewer, I guess in 2008, something like that. So we did lots of seasonal beers, sort of pretty standard seasonal beers. But Ghost Ship came about because we still have a pub called the Red Line in Southwold. I can't remember if you've actually been, Simon, but if you haven't, when you're allowed, you should too.
Yeah.
There's a pub in Southwold called the Red Line, and it used to have this sort of cabinet of old Adnams beers in there, and there was this beer in there called Deathly Pale Ale, and it had it was like a sort of 275ml bottle, sort of old looking sort of thing, had a skull and crossbones on the label. And it was, it was a really weird beer. It didn't really fit with Adnams as a brand, even consider we found out it had been bottled in 1975, but it didn't seem to fit with the image of Adnams at any time. And then we looked into it a bit more, and it turned out this was a beer that they brewed as a celebration beer, but actually they had it designed with the skull and crossbones. But just before they bottled it, they bottled it and decided they couldn't package it with the skull and crossbones on it. So they relabeled it as something called Centenary Pale Ale. But by that stage, they'd already had the labels printed. So a few hand-labeled bottles sort of got out. And one of these bottles ended up in the Red Line. And we thought Deathly Pale Ale is a fabulous name for a Halloween seasonal beer.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Of course, I'm just thinking then, why no skull and bones? It's a toxic sign, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is good.
And we went down the same route again. We sort of we gave it to the designer in house, and they sort of started looking at skull and crossbones again. And then quickly we decided, no, let's call it something else, and then it got called Ghost Ship instead. And Citra had only just been out, I guess, the year before.
Yeah.
So there was a Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn was just over, and he was raving about this new hop that he sort of just smelled. So we'd ordered some straight away and decided we were going to use it in the next seasonal beer, and it just happened to be Ghost Ship.
That's really interesting story. That because I remember it launched into supermarkets in a big way. Was it about 7 or 8 years ago? But you must have kept it local for the first couple of years. Was it?
Yeah, first years it was just seasonal. Yeah.
Yeah, and then boom, it went out there. I've got a couple of bottles of it.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Lighthouse. I should probably tell you something about Lighthouse.
Yeah. Go on. It's a really what I'd like to start with Lighthouse is how can I put it? I think it's probably one of your kind of beers that was it an IPA back in the day? Like a Green King IPA, you know?
No, we never went down that route. So this was a pale ale in the early 1900s, although it was called Champion Pale Ale at the time. So in the early 1900s, Adnams did a beer called Champion Pale Ale, and we sort of resurrected it, but because it was going to be a little bit different, we decided to call it Lighthouse. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it was always a pale ale. It was always intended to be a pale ale and not an IPA. So it's not an IPA that gradually got sort of diluted down to a sort of lower ABV because of sort of taxation. This beer was always relatively low anyway.
Right. Because exactly that. IPA has always been a confusing subject. It was always, when I was an 18-year-old 22 years ago, 23 years ago, unbelievably, I drink the local beer in Wales. Whenever you see the rugby, you see the big, all over the Millennium Stadium. I used to drink their IPA, and that was always 3.4, 3.6. But I'd actually prefer that over their bitter. It just had a little bit more of a hoppy. I didn't know it back then. I had no idea what I was drinking back then, but I just preferred it over the regular bitter. Yeah. And I think that was maybe because it was hopped a little bit more or somewhere along the lines. But the story I was always told with IPA was it was due to rationing. Was it during World War I and World War II? They didn't have enough barley and malt, so they dropped the ABV.
Yeah, so it varied a little bit across the country, but essentially all brewers had to drop the ABVs of their beers because they didn't want barley being tied up making beer instead of being used to make food. So essentially that's what happened. So IPAs, if you go back to the early 1900s, would have been somewhere between sort of 5 to sort of 7% ABV. Yeah. So then you had the First World War, you had a bit of rationing, ABVs came down. You had the Second World War, same thing happened, and I guess at some point the taxation system changed as well to tax people based on alcohol. So the more alcohol there was in there, the more you had to pay. Whereas if you go somewhere like the States, they have a flat sort of taxation on alcohol. So it doesn't matter whether it's 3% or 7%, it's the same flat rate. So, but we don't have that system here. So you progressively have to charge more for beers that go up in ABV. And I guess as brewers sort of cottoned on that they probably needed to make a living out of this business, they started having to make some of those choices about reducing ABVs. I remember
about 5 or 6 years ago, again, maybe longer, everything's 5 or 6 years ago with me. I remember the 2.5. Remember the 2.5% beers? And I was like, oh no, this is.
Yeah, so they brought the taxation cut in if you were under 2.8. So yeah, every brewery up and down the country launched a beer at 2.8 or under.
We seem to be going through that same situation again now with there seems to be a boom in non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, and I think it's not. I guess it's not unusual if you look across the rest of the sort of Europe really. So Germany and Spain have had a sort of big percentage of their markets being non-alcoholic and low alcohol for a long time. So it has been the percentage of the market here has always been pretty low, but that's changed in the last 2 or 3 years. It is growing really quickly because I think people still like the taste of beer, but if you can't drink and drive. And sometimes people do want to take a break from alcohol for whatever reason, whether it's because you're worried about your calorie intake that week and maybe you haven't been able to go for your 10-mile walk today or whatever it is. But
yeah.
So I think lots of people have decided to go that route, but they still want to taste a proper beer. They still want it to taste like beer.
I always find, and this is just for me, my own personal opinion, I'm sure there's people who disagree with me and agree with me. I always find there's something missing. There's a lot missing from a a non-alcoholic beer. I'm not sure if you've got something in your range that's non-alcoholic.
We do, Simon. We've got a Go Ship that's 0.5%.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Yes, yes. I actually drank it in a Brewers Fair pub.
It was memorable, and obviously, sorry.
That was the one I was like, oh God. not that I didn't like it. It was just, what it is a head brewer. All the malts are in there. What's missing? I've never been able to put my finger on it.
So it depends on how you're making it. So without boring people too much, essentially there's three ways of making it, I guess. The first way is you just don't put very much malt in the first place, so you don't get very much sugar out, and therefore you don't create much alcohol. But obviously, if you don't use much malt, there's not usually much body, and you can end up being a bit thin. The other way, the other two ways, both involve basically fermenting it as normal, because that's the thing that's sometimes missing in some beers is that fermentation characteristic. Because fermentation doesn't just make alcohol and CO2; it makes lots of other flavors. So and it's like, I guess you probably compare it to something like if the sort of difference between drinking instant coffee to having a properly brewed cup of coffee.
Right.
All the things you think you want are in there, but some of the little things that you didn't know you wanted aren't. So the sort of roundness and the complexity is not there.
Right.
So if you don't ferment it, you don't get those flavors. So therefore, I think the best way to do it is to ferment it and then take the alcohol away. And then you can either basically boil off the alcohol under a vacuum and boil it to about 40%. So if you remember, you probably won't remember things like Caliber.
Yeah, I remember Caliber.
Without disparaging Caliber too much, it tasted like it had been cooked because it had been cooked. It had been cooked with the alcohol.
So you boiled it into this steamed, like putting wine in it for the newbies out there who are watching. Like putting wine in a stew, you boil it all the way.
Yeah. So alcohol's got a lower boiling temperature than water, so it'll boil off. But you can do it under a vacuum, so you can do it at sort of 40 degrees. But essentially, if you add any heat to beer after it's been finished, then you end up getting that cooked flavor. So then the other way to do it, which is what we do, which is why I'm saying it's really good, because obviously I'm self-interested in it. We put it through something called a reverse osmosis system, which basically filters out the alcohol. So it keeps all the flavor behind, but filters out the rest of it. But what you're still missing is the alcohol. So
that's what
you're still missing the alcohol. So and alcohol obviously does lots of things. It enables lots of other flavors to sort of change and meld. And it gives a sort of sense of sweetness to things as well. So alcohol, as well as the sort of effects on your brain and your mood, will change flavors as well. So that's the bit that people are always trying to get over, is changing other things to make sure you get that sort of sense of that body and that fullness of the alcohol.
Brilliant. I've just been tasting both beers, and it's really fascinating to try the lager malt with the ale malt with the Adnams yeast. It's really a fascinating beer. I think you get more of the esters from the lager, the yeasty kind of. You definitely get a little bit more of the and of course then you get more of the grain from the more biscuity malt. But it's really, it's only in situations like this that you do these things, and it's a fascinating process. Can I tell you what, Fergus? I will ask you now, because I've got loads of beer in the fridge from you guys. I've got your Beaverton beers, and I've got your Magic Rock beers, and I think I got a Camden. Yeah. Camden as well. Did you want to head off into a funky direction with the next beer?
Should we do the Camden next? If you've got that in the fridge. So that's sort of, I think, we try and taste things in the sort of order of intensity. That's it. So to celebrate Ghost Ship being 10 years old this year, we thought we'd do a sort of series of collaborations. The idea was really to do most of them in sort of cask, but obviously, given the situation, we the current situation, we haven't managed to do that. So most of this has been in can, which actually has sold really, really well. I think that the Camden on Sea particularly, we did the first brew of it back in, the last place I travelled to before the first situation was to London to do a launch of this beer with Rob from Camden. So that was the last place I went to.
Wow. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Camden, their IPA, the Hell's Lager. But there was one beer that I don't see anymore from Camden. Was it the Camden Wheat? Can you remember Camden?
Yeah, the Gentleman Wit. Yeah, that was really nice.
That was it.
Really nice. Yeah.
Is it? Do they still produce that? All I see now is the Hell's Lager.
I don't think they do. I think it was always going to be a relatively small brand for them because wheat beers don't tend to sell particularly well in the UK. But it was a lovely beer, really nice. I think they used some bergamot in there as well. I think it was really nice and fruity. But the beer I probably missed most from them, they did a smoked lager. If you ever got to try that,
I did. Yeah.
I love that. It just had this nice subtle smoke to it but just sat really nicely in the beer. So that's the beer I probably miss from them most.
Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff. And one of the breweries I would say that even after the takeover, the quality just stayed the same. In fact, it probably got a little bit better.
Yeah,
I think brilliant.
Yeah, I think the beers have consistently been really good.
One of those easy things to do, isn't it? Is to say that's the brewery finish now. You know what? Well, once it's had a big injection of cash. We've got a £2 super chat from Lord's Brewing Company up in Huddersfield, UK. Hello, everyone. Sorry.
What does the super chat mean? You'll have to explain it.
Sorry, Fergus. So
Okay.
I'll read it out. Hello, everyone, and a big welcome to Adnams. So if we got a lot of people watching, so like a Friday night, we can do anything from 400 to 500 people tuned in, and the comments they're like rip-roaring, and it's hard to even read them before they're gone. So what happens with the super chat is people pay money for their comment to be highlighted, and it's very much in my radar, as a broadcaster, because I can see that the comments come through. I want to read it, and it comes to myself. It's a financial. It's like a tip jar, I suppose. But
Gary reckons you owe me £1 now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we'll split it tonight, Fergus. We'll split. Or maybe we'll donate it to a charity of our choice. That might be another good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So Camden on Sea is a sort of cross between Camden Hells and Ghost Ship, really. So we use the base of basically Hells, and then we use the hops out of Ghost Ship. So it's essentially a Citra sort of India Pale Lager.
It smells really good, and it's even. I mean, holding it half a yard away, it's really filling the room with the Citra hop.
Yeah, I think the Citra comes through really well, I have to say.
Yeah.
Really happy with it.
It's very clean. I haven't drank any yet, but it's really clean. Really clean.
Yeah. I think so. The thing from Citra, you can obviously get citrus flavor, so you get a bit of lemon, a bit of lime. But the thing I really like about Citra is you can get this elderflower note. I get sort of gooseberry sort of note sometimes, and that's the thing that I really like about Citra, because you can get the other citrus things from other hops, but that gooseberry and that sort of elderflower is a bit harder to come by, and that's the thing we really look for.
Yeah, it's really good, really good. Just you're going to come and say hello. Come on in, say hello. Yes, Mel, the craft beer lady. She's just come in from work.
Hello.
My mask on.
Mel's a pharmacist in.
I'm not a pharmacist yet.
Not a pharmacist.
I wish I was. I think.
She's been in the job 4 years. I keep calling her a pharmacist only because she looks like one.
There's a question from Mr. Lexus, and I think he's asked it a couple of times, so I better answer him. We do. Adnams do own a few pubs, so we've got about 50 pubs, sort of all really in East Anglia. Sort of 40 of them are sort of tied pubs, and the other 10 are sort of managed, give or take. So yeah, we do have a few pubs, and obviously they have had a tough old time of it in the situation.
in this situation. Yeah.
Situation. They've had a tough all time of it. Obviously, most of our pubs are in tier 2 at the moment. We've got a couple in tier 3, but most of them in tier 2. But it's still quite hard, I think, for them to operate at the moment.
I asked them. I had a really, really good interview with a quite senior brewery owner 2 weeks ago. Simon Buckley. Have you heard of Simon Buckley? Evan Evans Brewery.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So I went to his pub, the Cricketers in Cardiff, and we sat down and we had a half an hour talk about Mal's got the kettle on a moment. He said doing a pot noodle. That's the buzzing in the background. But we had a chat about this situation. It's really awful. It's really awful.
No, it is.
I asked the question to him, and I don't think he quite got where I was coming from. But the question I asked Simon, and I'll ask yourself as a head brewer at the same time, is: are people grabbing their coats at 9:30? You know, they're like the 10 o'clock where it's like you got to go at 10. Are people conscious of the fact that they're almost getting themselves ready to leave at 9:30, and it's not like a full night like an 11 o'clock, 11 would be normal for them?
Yeah, I think that it's obviously so in tier 2. Obviously, it's restricted inside to single households. And you have to have a meal. But I think so that even before when they were allowed to, I think that's missing a little bit now is the sort of spontaneity. So you can't just say to someone after work, let's go for a quick pint. Or if you are going out, you sort of have to plan everything ahead. So all that spontaneity, all that, we'll stay for a few more. Well, you can't really do that unless you're going to have another 12 Scotch eggs. So that sort of spontaneity of the pub life is sort of missing at the moment. But it will come back, and I think we can talk about where it is now. But I think the nice thing is we know at some point next year, we don't know when, but when enough people are vaccinated, that actually some sense of normality will come back to life, and you can do those things again. It's going to be hard, and I think the difficult thing is trying to make sure you survive until then. With pubs shut, any brewery is going to be struggling financially because that a lot of your money and a lot of your beer sales obviously usually go through pubs. So it's trying to survive. And same for pubs; they've got to try and survive. But I think if you can survive, there is some light there, and I think people will want to come back and really embrace the pub again, and really appreciate it again, which I think would be fantastic. But we've got to get there first.
Questions just come into my mind because I'm reading and I'm doing a million things at once. I got a comment. I got a question that's just hit my mind, and I'm going to remind myself later on. But because I want to carry on with the conversation at hand, and that's you've hit the nail on the head. For me, what stopped me going to a pub on a regular basis, even when I could, was just the fact that I can grab my coat off the hook and just go.
Yeah.
It's downloading apps and finding some of these pub, booking slots, like a 2-hour slot.
Yeah.
Something just puts you off. It just goes right. This is difficult. This is it's something. The pub is something that you shouldn't have to think about. You just grab your coat and maybe grab your dog with you and go walking the dog type of thing. And you go to the pub.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're going to the pub to have some fun, and booking your 2-hour slot of fun is probably not exactly what you wanted to do. You wanted to have it a bit more free flowing than that. But I think I think you can appreciate what it is for now. I think support pubs where you can, if you're allowed to, and keep them going. But ultimately, we want to get back to a stage where the restrictions are lifted and people can sort of enjoy pubs for what they really are, which is places to meet and properly socialise with people.
Fergus, I'm really pleased to have you on. Do you mind grabbing a few of the comments while I run to the toilet?
Really, Simon, what's going on?
Kind of guzzle beer, and it kind of after this it'll be every 20 minutes. But if you can grab a couple, I tell you what, this is your opportunity, everybody, to hit Fergus with some comments. Travis is from Australia. Maybe grab a comment from Australia. But I'm going to run to the toilet.
Yeah. I've got a brother and sister in Australia. And they're very happy telling me how good life is down there, and everything's sort of getting back to normal, really. But we actually sell some Go Ship. Go Ship's probably Australia's our biggest export, and Go Ship's our biggest beer down in Australia. So hopefully, Travis, you get to see some Go Ship around the place. I think it's in Dan Murphy's, if that makes sense. I don't really know the stores down there, but yeah, Dan Murphy's is where it is. What else is happening on the comments? Yeah, I mean, in terms of the sort of cases that were were sort of allocated to pubs, it was really low. But I guess in terms of sort of making the decisions, you have to decide where else you can shut. And government's already decided that pubs was a thing to give way, which I think it's a difficult decision, and I wouldn't want to make it. But I think what I would say is that they haven't really supported pubs. So if you're going to tell pubs to shut, then you need to support them and sort of do what Wales did, and they put in a lot of support, I think, for pubs. So that's what we would like to see, really. What else we got down here? Salty Popcorn says, "Are we going to put Adnams Tally Ho in the supermarkets?" We don't. We only brew Tally Ho once a year, so typically we keep it to relatively small sort of distribution. So we sell it on our web shop, in our own stores. So as well as the pubs, we also have our own stores. Again, mostly in East Anglia. So if you're in East Anglia, then you can sort of pick up Tally Ho in some of those pubs. And we do Tally Ho as a sort of yearly vintage, really. So we're just brewed this year's vintage. It was touch and go as to whether we would do or not, because typically Tally Ho, a lot of it goes into cask as well, which again is not something we want to do right now. But we have brewed it, and it is getting bottled next week, I think. So just in time for Christmas. Welcome back, Simon.
I'm just reading one then by one of our really good, and he's always having a laugh on the live feeds, Big Kev. He said, Fergus asked Forrest Gump who's done his haircut.
I can see the resemblance.
Yeah, that was brilliant. I love that. I seen that as soon as I come down. Ask Forrest. Oh, yeah, I got it. Yeah. I got one from Lord's Brewing Company. If you've answered it, let me know. Fergus, how do you keep such good consistency with such large brewing kits? That's from Lord's.
So I guess like anyone who brews beer will know that you can't brew everything absolutely consistently. There are always variations from batch to batch. So we obviously all enjoy making new beers and new recipes, but the main job of the brewery is to try and brew the same thing again and again and again and again as consistently as you can. But so it's usual things. It's like making sure everyone does the same thing in terms of weighing out raw materials, make sure you weigh out the same amounts, make sure all the temperatures are as accurate as you can make them to be and consistent as you can make them to be. So it's all that boring stuff about making sure everyone does stuff as well as you can possibly do. And the usual thing about brewing is cleanliness is sort of 90% of the cleaning is probably 90% of what you do.
So 10% brewing, 90% cleaning.
it's all that boring stuff. And then tasting. I think that the thing that probably drives all your decisions about changing ingredients, and you do have to change the sort of amounts and sometimes the types of ingredients you're putting in at different points because the batches and the seasonal variation means they do change. So you have to acknowledge you will change recipes. So you do that based on a tasting, and over time, if things are drifting out of where you want them to be, then you bring it back in by tweaking the recipes to change it. And you always have to be tasting and always taste with a panel of people because we're all blind to different things. There's a flavor called butyric acid, which I'm not particularly sensitive to, but essentially it's sort of baby sick. At high levels, it's a baby sick. I'm not particularly sensitive to it, and about half the population isn't. But people who are sensitive to it really smell it. So cinnamon
in beers is mine. I can have vanilla. Amazingly, cinnamon and vanilla. I always start off by saying how spicy and peppery the beer is, and then I read the back of the bottle and it says vanilla. Like, oh yeah. And I tell people I say in the review, I just can't pick can't seem to pick out vanilla and cinnamon. But once you read it, it's obvious to you. It's absolutely obvious to you.
Yeah.
I got one very quickly on the previous subject about cleanliness and consistency. I was at the Diacetyl Brewery in Leuven in Belgium about 3 or 4 years ago, and the way that the really large breweries keep it consistent is to brew with rice. And my argument there is you could have a bowl of rice in anywhere in the world really, and it will always taste like boiled rice, won't it? It's just, you know.
I'll have to put that to the test. I would say some sake breweries would probably disagree with you that rice tastes the same everywhere, but
I
think the other way to make sure your beer is consistent, and this is where some of the big breweries can obviously sort of do well, is you brew the same thing every day and you have 20 tanks of the same beer and you blend them all together. That's the easiest way to make a really consistent beer. Just blend everything away, and then you don't have to worry about batch to batch variations.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Fergus. I never thought of that. That makes total sense. I got another one from
the rice.
Better than the rice one. That was just something I thought. I thought, and it was probably a silly thing, but I thought as soon as they told me, Stella's, a load of rice goes in this tank, I thought, well, why are they using rice? And of course, there's always cost in there. But the other reason I was thinking, it must be because boiled rice is boiled blooming rice. It tastes the same and that's just something that hit my mind. I'm probably completely wrong.
I think there's a little bit. It's not really cost, because I think the cost is probably pretty similar now to barley. But I think if you use rice, you get less flavour. So if you want a really light tasting beer, then actually adding some rice just lightens the whole thing up a little bit. So you are probably right that there's going to be less variation in a batch of rice than there is between batches of barley, because it just has lots of less flavour anyway. But I would say the main reason they use it is to lighten the flavour in the first place.
Brilliant. Got you. That was really enlightening. I'm going to take that whole concept, because I mentioned it in so many reviews, and I'm going to take that whole thing away now and forget about it. I got another one from Paul's Beer Reviews. Really, really good question here. Fergus, what beer is your favourite of the Adnams range and why?
So I'm not going to answer that question because I love them all equally, Simon.
No worries. Okay.
I can tell you what's in my fridge at the moment. So I've got some of the Red Phantom, which is the collab we did with Magic Rock. I think that's in my fridge. Usually there's some Tally-Ho and some Broadside in the cupboard. So usually some Tally-Ho and Broadside. And some Go Ship as well. But genuinely, one of the things I like about beer is there's so much choice and so much variety. So there's not one beer style that I always go back to. I'm always trying to taste something new and keep trying things. So genuinely, it's the variety I really like about beer.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. I'm gonna move on to my own questions now without just reading. We'll get into that a little later on. But shall we move on to our next beer, Fergus? I'm fancying something maybe a little bit more malty. Would that be? What am I looking at?
Have you got some Broadside? Do you want to do some Broadside?
Why haven't I got Broadside? Why haven't I got any Broadside? My favourite beer, and I wanted to talk about the whole Broadside. I haven't got a bottle. Oh no! Never mind. Oh dear.
This is Broadside. There you go. I can taste it for you, Simon, if that helps you.
In 20 years' time, you'll be able to pass it through the internet to me. Yeah. And we got a couple of super chats in. Joe Biden's Dentures out of Ohio in America, and Hulk Mark B. Thank you very much for the super chats. Joe saying, thanks for joining us all at the Stone Crow. Fergus, what's your favourite American brewery? Ooh, there we go.
There's lots.
You answer that, and I'll go double check if I can find my Broadside.
You're going to the toilet again, Simon. That's what you're doing. Lots of really great American breweries. we had the guys over from Firestone Walker over quite a few years ago, I guess now. So I've always loved what everything Firestone do. Heady Topper, the Alchemist, I think it's one of my favourite US beers. Really sort of set the sort of benchmark in terms of New England IPA. Well, created the style really before people even realised it was a style. Who else? Crooked Stave. I think that if you like sort of sour beers, I think they do some fantastic sort of sour beers. All the classics like sort of Goose Island. I think fantastic breweries. Lots of them. Simon, who's your favourite American brewery?
It's a really big one, isn't it? And I think I was always privileged this year. Have you heard of Russian River?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, bound.
Yeah, fantastic beer. Yeah.
The whole kind of queuing up on the motorway to get the beers.
Yeah.
Have you heard that way? So people have to queue up for the new people who are watching and are not aware of this. You have to queue up on a road outside with your car every time they launch Pliny the Younger.
Yeah, that's it.
And you're only allowed to buy one bottle each. So forgive me. The wonderful follower out there who sent me this queued up for hours.
Yeah.
Bought a bottle of this and then sent it to the UK. I couldn't believe it. Felt so privileged and unlucky, but I don't know if that played on my mind, but that was incredible. That was because it was super fresh. He bought it, took it home, wrapped it up, and sent it across. And it was with me within a week. So I just felt super. It's February. I'm not sure if my camera will pick that up, but it's February 2020 on there. So it was this year. It feels like 4 years ago now, after the year we've had, because it was just before things kicked off here. And I just remember loving this beer. But I'm not sure if it was influenced by...
Yeah, but that's fine. I think everything we taste is influenced by what we're thinking at the time or how we're feeling about it. So I think that is just part. That becomes part of the flavour. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with it influencing how you thought about it. It's what people want you to do.
Absolutely, it was brilliant. Yeah, I love that.
Broadside's tasting lovely, Simon.
I haven't got a Waitrose near me anymore either. I down Waitrose and buy one. I'll open up. I tell you what, I'll open up. What about your while you choose that, I'll open up your dry hop lager.
Yeah, you open that. Quite different, but yeah, you open that.
Okay. Yeah, very, very different.
So we say that I think the last time we probably talked was probably 10 years ago when you reviewed a case of beer we sent you. And there's a video of you from, it is just over 10 years ago, I think October 2010. When you reviewed some Broadside.
Oh, I loved it. And it was always, we had a Waitrose about a mile away. It was our nearest supermarket.
Yeah.
It's now split between Iceland and Home Bargains. So I used to always nip over there and buy a couple of bottles of Broadside. And I'd always probably... a mate who worked in Howden's, the joinery shops, Howden's. He used to work on the front desk. Me being a carpenter, always buying doors and stuff off him at the time, he'd always walk his dog in the evening. And I'd see him on my way to Waitrose, and he'd say to me, "Are you off to Waitrose to buy your Broadside?" And I say, "Yeah." I'd always drink, bro. After that video, for years, I'd always have a couple of bottles of Broadside in the Stone Crow. There's been
a bit of a gap though, Simon. I think you've weaned yourself off Broadside for too long. You need to get yourself back on.
The problem I've got is
people keep sending you beer.
yeah. That's one problem. The other one is it closed down, and our nearest Waitrose now is 9 miles away. So I'm not sure if you stock it in Tesco, Morrison's, or anywhere like that.
Yeah. It's stocked in most supermarkets. Not everywhere nationally, but in most supermarkets you can get it. And if it's not in there, best thing to do is go and hassle the store manager, and they'll get it in.
Brilliant. Yeah, of course. And a very quick story on that is that I was in Bergen in Norway. Have you been to Bergen?
No, I haven't. No, I made it to Sweden, but didn't quite make it to Norway.
Yeah, I went to brew a beer with Lighthouse microbrewery. I've brewed 4 times with them now, Imperial Stouts, and I got a really good relationship with the head brewer, Rune. He might be watching tonight. I spoke to him earlier on. It's an amazing world where you can speak to people from all over the place these days on Facebook. But I mentioned the fact that we were going to be talking about the Broadside, where we took it up the side of a mountain. So the story goes, the head brewer of Lighthouse microbrewery went into a second-hand shop to buy some furniture, and he's seen a bottle of the Broadside, a 330 milliliter bottle from the 1970s.
Yeah.
It was already over 40 years old.
Yeah.
And he said, Simon's coming, he loves Broadside. We're going to take it up the side of the mountain. And we had an amazing view. We could see for miles over the Norwegian fjords.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. We drank this beer and it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And it didn't, there was no off flavors in this beer, even though it was 40 years old. It was incredible. The yeast was black, as it always is. Why is that? Is it just it's completely died off? Is it?
Yeah, it'll have well died by then. But I think if you got it, if it was a 1970s bottle, it would have been one of the earliest productions, because Broadside was first brewed in 1972.
Wow.
To celebrate the tricentenary of the Battle of Solbay, which I'm sure you all learned about in your history lessons. Yeah. But so and then it just became a permanent beer. So yeah, if it was a 1970s bottle, you would have definitely had one of the earlier batches of that. But yeah, I think all old beer ends up tasting sort of like sherry after a while. So that all that sort of oxidized character becomes more, particularly in darker beers. I think you get that sort of sherry characteristic coming through after 5-6 years, whatever it is. But yeah, 40 years, it would definitely have quite a sherry tang to it.
Oh, it's incredible! It was an incredible beer, really was. But it's always apprehensive at the same time, isn't it? You're always like, what,
Yeah. I think with old beer, it's unlikely to kill you. So have a taste.
Did you try some of the old Thomas Hardy stuff?
Yeah, we tried. So there's a pub near us called the Anchor in Walberswick, who's run by a guy called Mark Dauber, and he got left some of Michael Jackson's, not that Michael Jackson, the other Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
some of his beer collection. So he often opens some of the older beers. So yeah, we've had some really interesting sort of Thomas Hardys when he's opened those. Some of them absolutely fantastic. So really aged well and sort of have that nice sweet sherry note without the oxidized character. They're fantastic. Every now and again you get a duff one, but if it's a beer that's 30 years old or 40 years old, then you have to accept that sometimes they're not going to be exactly as they should be.
No. It's probably the foil that keeps a lot of it, isn't it? That's a foil neck, really. That if we're going to get really geeky, you'd always leak a bit of air through the cap, isn't you? Even if it's micro, and the foil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you can keep oxygen out, then it will age much better. But I think probably the key to some of those beers is they still age, but they age in a way that we like rather than a way that we don't like.
Of course.
Some of the same oxidation processes are happening. It just happens to be with the combination of flavors that were already there. It ages and changes those flavors into something we really like rather than something we don't.
Absolutely. Is there with it being a beer, forgive me, is it 6%?
This is 6.3, yeah. 6.3.
Have you ever dabbled with the idea of barrel aging it?
Yeah, we do. Where have you been, Simon? We do.
This, isn't it? Is it
We do. No, it's not that one. We do another one in a similar bottle to that, which is our barrel aged Broadside. So we age it like a sort of sherry process. So right. What they do is they always leave some of the previous sherry in the barrel, and then they take some out and then top it up again. So you always have something that was in there in the first place. So we do the same thing with Broadside. We put it in some whiskey barrels. We take about 2/3 of it out and then top it up with fresh beer, age it for a year, take it out, age it for a year, take it out, age it for a year. And we sort of use some cherries as well. We put some cherries in. And you get a little bit of that. So we sort of wanted a slight nod towards something like Rodenbach, where you have that really rich character, but you have this slight acidity as well.
Yeah,
So
and like a leather taste as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly like that. So it ages really, really well. But we only do it in really small batches. So I think this year we've only got about 1,000 liters of it, and then it's out for bottling at the moment. It'll hopefully be back next week.
That would be incredible. Only a bottle would be.
Yeah.
I'd love that. That would be my ultimate Christmas dinner. When the dinner's hot on the table, I'm going to open my double broadside. Is that what it's called? Double broadside?
So we call it both barrels.
Both barrels.
Yeah.
Wondering why I haven't tried that, and I'm asking a really silly question: that do you barrel age broadside? Brilliant. Just going to get some comments then.
Yeah.
Broadside in my rural country, local, lovely. The Thor and gentleman approves. Richard, brilliant. Does sugar in beer break down with age, even without any live oxygen yeast or oxygen? Sorry.
So what you tend to find with beers at ages, if there's no yeast in there, it probably won't break it down. But there will be some sugars in there that would have been unfermentable anyway. But what you tend to find is beer over time gets sweeter because the bitterness gets broken down. So the reason why lots of old beers start to taste like sherry isn't because it's getting sweeter. It's just because the bitterness is disappearing. So over time, the balance goes out, and you start getting this sort of sweet characteristic to the beer.
We got 157 likes in. Can we do 200 likes? We got 254 people in, which is incredible for a Tuesday night. It really is good for a Tuesday night. Thank you all so very much for tuning, spending your time. What's the story? The story would be rather watching a brewing channel than a baking channel. Yeah, is that still on? I always find the viewership drops off completely at a certain time, and I'm like, there's a baking channel. I'm like, oh. Yeah. On your website, Fergus, you got everything from wine, cider. I always assumed cast barrel beer would be high in ABV, but your beer barreling, can you, Big Kev's comment, I can't quite work that one out. Sorry, can you see that? I
can see the top of it, but I think there must be a bit left. But yeah, so we do have, as well as the beer, we also have the distillery, so there's some spirits on there. So we do vodka, gin, and whiskey, and a few other bits in between. And then we also bring in wine. So some of it's under our own brand. So it sort of goes back to when we sort of had a bigger pub estate, but we sort of have a wine distribution sort of business. So we go out and select different batches. And we've got a sort of James, who's our sort of master of wine. He goes out and selects the sort of what he thinks is going to be the best batch from that particular vineyard.
Brilliant. That's something I think maybe comes. Well, I'm getting old now. With age, I need to look at my wines and I just love beer so much, and I get sent so much beer that it's impossible for me to think of taking on something else. I got a super chat from Neil79. Evening, gents. This is really fascinating. Love Ghost Ship Top Beer. Thank you, Neil. Really appreciate your kind remarks. Yeah, it is. I'm enjoying myself. You enjoying yourself, Fergus?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. You've had 2 drinks so far, so that's nice. It's
brilliant. I'm really enjoying myself. And this beer's this dry hop lager is flying down. That's the trouble now. Yeah. I'm going to be back and forth the toilet every 15 minutes.
Yeah, so I'll throw a bit of work stuff in. So this dry hop lager is dry hopped with some Australian Galaxy. So you should get a sort of nice peachy sort of note to it.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It is a sort of hoppy lager. But this is fermented with a proper lager yeast, so it is really clean. But then you get that fruit note from the Galaxy as well.
I've got a question, and this is from my work stuff as well, which I don't write anything down. I just stick it up here, and it comes out through the night. I remember quite fondly that you put a microbrewery into your plants. again, I'm just going to use 5-6 years ago. I said that 8 times tonight. So you put a craft plant in, and I remember your Jack brand being. Oh, it's not on there anymore. You used to call it the Jack brand, didn't you?
Yeah, it sort of still has it on the front. So that bit, yeah. So just by the sort of size of it, it says Jack brand.
Right, of course, yeah.
But that Jack brand goes back to one of our first sort of trademarks in the 1920s. But that image on the can, obviously, it wasn't in the sort of neon colours it is now. But that image on the can was used in the 1920s on our bottles. So we've got lots of sort of old brown bottles with that screen printed on. So that's where that image comes from.
Right. So you decided to, when you obviously kind of got together and thought, right, we're going to put a craft brewery in. I think at the time there was a lot of other regionals doing the same thing, putting little craft breweries in. Of course, you guys, we all have a great time at the Guild of Beer Writers, and we all kind of write stuff down about where we can go with it, with everything. But it was a great thing to do, to put a craft brewery in, because it meant that you could experiment on a much smaller scale with
So I think
and porters and
So what we did was we essentially put in a garage brewery just to let us do some trials in house.
Brilliant.
So we still brewed everything through the main kit. So everything was still brewed in the same kit, but the garage brewery just gave us the option of doing little small batches to see, just basically to see what would work and what wouldn't work. Trialing new hops or new yeast strains or herbs and spices, whatever it is, that just gave us the option to do that. But everything still went through the main kit. So when it was actually going out to sale, all of that had been brewed on the big kit.
How easier did that make your job, where you could go, right, I've got something in my head, I want to give it a go. I don't want to put 80 bags of malts in with this funky idea that I got, but we've got this garage brewery. I can be creative. It's not going to cost the company a lot of money. Let's go for it. What's the craziest brew you've done with the Jack brand? Your garage brewery, as you've.
I think so. We played with lots of different. I think the herbs and spices one is always quite interesting because they can go quite badly wrong. So probably one of the earlier ones, going back to not 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. One of the stupidest things I probably did was we did this spiced winter ale. So we did it on the small kit, worked really well, really liked it. Decided we'd do a full batch of it, and it was going to be a cask beer. So we put it into cask. But then I decided it would be a good idea to dry hop it with some cinnamon. So I put a full stick of cinnamon into each individual cask. So when it was sitting in pub cellars, it would age a bit more, and you get a bit more cinnamon characteristic out of it.
Okay.
Which actually worked, flavor-wise, worked really well. The thing that was really bad about it was when it came back to the brewery, once the casks were empty, this big cinnamon stick was still bloody in the cask, and we couldn't we couldn't get them out. So we had to spend days smashing up the cinnamon sticks to try and get the buggers out.
Right, of course. So it's sort of flavouring the beer after that. But that's the. Thank you for your honesty with that. That's just fantastic. I mean,
I wasn't very popular in the brewery that day. When everyone realised they were going to have to spend the next 2 days smashing up cinnamon back.
Talking about the real craft side of the brewery, then, we were going to move on to this subject anyway. The Tesco and the Morrisons, even now Sainsbury's, starting to compete quite heavily with one another as to who can put the best £3.50 can of craft beer on their shelves. Is there is that what you're looking into, canning 440 cans where you can go, right, I've been to Sainsbury's on my Saturday night, or my Tesco's, I've tried this beer, I can do something pretty similar to this, I can do this. And of course, being a bigger brewer, you can easily all a little bit easier kind of hit that kind of £3 price point. Is that something that?
So I mean, I think to some degree we would like to be able to, but I think Adnams is in this place where I think we're not seen as a craft brewery. I think because I guess we've been around since 1872. I think craft for lots of people instantly means new. So I think we struggle to get people to look at us as a craft brewery, even if we might do similar beers and similar beer styles. I think that's always a difficult bit. But I think the main thing for us, I guess for the future, is we need to make sure we actually make money off the beers. So selling beers to supermarkets is not always a great way of making any money. So
right.
And particularly at the moment, where we've got pubs are shut, we're sort of really looking at how we keep everything going until pubs start coming back again. I think the main thing for us is to make sure whatever we do, we're actually getting some return out of it. So if we can do a beer that sells in the supermarkets and we still make a profit out of it, great. If it's not, then it doesn't work for us.
That's a brilliant answer. And it frustrates me, and it must frustrate you because you've been around for such a long time. For me. After no, not you, the brewery. I'm Fergus.
Both are probably true now.
The brewery's been around such a long time that I got to be careful what I say now. The brewery's been around such a long time. I've only ever had good beer from your brewery. For me, Broadside is a craft beer. It really is, the complexity of the beer, and then we're talking about your New England IPAs and your triple not triples and your ghost ships and your tally ho. For me, it is craft. Does it ever frustrate you that because you're 150 years old, say, that you're not considered craft? Is it an element of frustration there? Because it frustrates me, and I'm somebody who just buys your beer.
To a degree, I think when we first started doing the Jack Brand range, I think we probably maybe got a little bit carried away because we would have called them craft beers at the time, but I think pretty quickly we stopped doing that because craft is such an undefined word in the UK. So in the US, craft has a meaning, and it's a very specific meaning, although it's probably a bit blurred around the edges now. But it has at least a meaning, and you can try and work out who is and who isn't. Whereas in the UK, because we've always had this diverse brewing industry and diverse range of beers, it's sort of never fitted. So I think craft for most people in the UK sort of means modern. Not everybody. I think some people have a broader opinion of it. So I think we sort of leave it to, we don't get frustrated by it now. We just leave it for people to decide whether they like a beer or whether they don't like a beer. So I think that the frustration is just getting people to try it in the first place. And then we go from there. So I think once people try it, then they can make their own judgment, and then we can talk about what it is they did or didn't like about it and whether they enjoyed it. But until they try it, that's the thing we need to get over.
Yeah, and I suppose you could look. I know a few German craft brewers as well, and a few Belgian craft brewers who, again, there's such a rich history in Germany and Belgium and the UK. When it comes to good beer, Weissens and triples, that, pardon me, they find it even more difficult than us to get traction in something that and they're the small craft brewers. They can get no traction at all because they're already, the regional breweries over there are already producing fantastic. Yeah. If you think of the New England IPA style of beer, it's hazy. It's flavoursome. It's got a great aroma. You could be talking about a New England IPA as well as a Weizen, you know? Yeah.
I see what you mean. Yeah, but yeah, I think those three countries have historically been a sort of the bastion of sort of great beer. So you've got Germany, Belgium, and the UK have really, for the last 100 years have been producing some fantastic different styles of beer. Whereas now the rest of the world is catching on. So it's much easier if you're a brewery in Italy to come out as a craft brewery than it would, because the history of brewing in Italy has always been superseded by wine. Whereas when you try doing that in Germany, then you've got you've got these giant breweries producing fantastic beer that hasn't been sort of watered down and sort of minimized to try and appeal to the widest market. You still have some fantastic wheat beers. You've got some fantastic sour beers coming out of Belgium.
Yeah,
but they've been doing it for so long that it's not seen as something new or something strange or innovative. It is just, it's the beer that comes out of Belgium and it's great, but actually it's not craft. Well, of course it's craft. If you define it as most people would, I guess, define it, but outside of the beer industry, craft means something slightly differently, I think.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to quickly get this one from Simon Wood, the £5 super chat, and asking me to say something which I'm never going to be able to say.
What's he saying?
Fergus, it's nearly time for Simon to say. Can you see that?
I've just got to scroll up to find it. Hold on. You've got to say before. I don't know.
No, he's trying to. Great show, guys. Great show.
It needs to go into the Irish translator. There's definitely a few Irish words in there.
Oh, is there?
I'll have to confess, Simon, I gave up learning Irish language as soon as I possibly could.
Same to me in Wales, yeah.
I was never very good at it, but in primary school they used to make us learn Irish from this book called Peg, and Peg is a book about the most depressing thing you could ever imagine. It was this woman who had like 20 kids, and 16 of them died in childbirth.
Oh.
And every moment of her life was another tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. Yeah. And for some reason they thought this was the book to give primary school kids to enthuse them into learning Irish. And it just put me off. It put me off the language for life.
Yeah, I always remember Bill the Burglar in my junior school. Bill the Burglar.
All right.
It's horrendous, like type of thing. But yeah, exactly the same thing. But honestly, I did the same thing. I offended a few people where I said Welsh is a dead language, and I really offended some of my teachers there. But that's another subject. I got a couple more super chats, and it's come quite kind of timely. Two chats, one from Joel Morris, and then we got one from Johnny Williams. Do you guys make a stout or a porter? That's from Joel Morris. And then from Johnny Williams, hi Fergus, plans to do a pastry stout or similar?
We don't have a pastry stout, but we do have a Blackshore stout. So straightforward stout, no lactose added. We've been doing that for about 3 years. So it's probably very much in the sort of Guinness style. Maybe not quite as dry. There's a bit more sweetness to it. But yeah, it's got that, what you'd expect, that sort of normal chocolatey sort of coffee sort of taste for the porter. We also do a beer called Old, which is a mild, it's sort of dark mild. We've been doing that since sort of 1890, but we've bottled it for the first time this year. And again, that's got some nice dark sort of licorice sort of and sort of red berry fruits to it. But yeah, no plans to do a pastry stout at the moment. I forgot to say probably earlier when someone was asking about what the craziest beer we did was. I don't know how I forgot it, but we did a cucumber sour beer. So that could be what you'd expect it to be. Hold on. Oh yeah. I've just been reminded by my brother and half that we do a beer called Oyster, an oyster stout. There is no oysters in it. It's just the name of it. So it goes back to when sort of the porters would have been the sort of normal, I guess, the drink of choice for the porters who sort of move stuff around London. And oysters were back then in the sort of 1800s would have been considered to be sort of peasant food. So oysters were cheap, and that's what sort of everyday people sort of ate. And typically they would eat oysters and drink stout. So that's where the sort of oyster stout comes from. But yeah, the craziest beer we probably did was, and we still have some in stock, is called Cucamelon, which is this cucumber sour, which is, as you'd sort of expect, it has cucumber, some hops called melon, which gives a sort of melon note, and then the acidity of the sort of sour beer. So it's actually it's a really refreshing beer, but it's actually quite a weird beer, I think, for people to get their heads around. I was just telling them, Simon, that when you asked about the craziest beer we did, I forgot that we did a beer called Cucamelon Sour, which is essentially cucumber sour beer. That was the weirdest beer we probably did.
Did you use the Belgium technique of souring a beer, where you split the malts? You said can either send it sweet or sour.
No, so we did the kettle souring. If you've come across that, so we added bacteria directly into the kettle, left it for a day, 2 days, and those bacteria then sour the wort, and then we treat it like a normal beer from there.
Brilliant. I'm ready for either a red Phantom or a Strange Seas.
I would go Strange Seas first, and then we can do red Phantom. So Strange Seas was a collaboration with Beaverton.
Yeah, brilliant.
So we did again, this was really meant to be a cask beer, so I think Beaverton were really excited to do a cask beer. But in the end, we sort of had to transition it into being a can, because of obvious reasons. But we thought for this one we'd use a couple of new hop varieties, which were called Brew 1, and at the time the other hop variety didn't even have a name. It was called HBC 692. I think it's got a name now. I think it's called Phallus, but at the time it didn't have a name. So you should get some nice coconut sort of notes to it, a bit of sort of tropical fruit as well.
Yeah, I've heard of these. I think I've had something with these coconutty hops. Oh yeah, definitely. Mine's quite cold, so I'm going to be honest. I might have over chilled mine, but I'll probably get a little bit more flavour as it warms up a little bit. But yeah, I can definitely get the coconut. Maybe some lime.
Yeah, there you go, a bit of lime. There you go. Bit of lime in the coconut.
Oh yeah, lime.
Really
clean, really clean.
Yeah, but I think the coconut hangs around, so you get that sort of coating, a little bit of coconut.
Mm. But again, that wonderful Adnams yeast that is there. I like the yeast. It's really good.
Yeah, no, we do. I mean, like I say, we love. I love the fact we have a house character, because I think you can obviously set a brewery up anywhere in the world now, and you can brew any beer style exactly how you want it to be. You can strip all the water, take all the minerals out, and end up with as pure water as you want, and dose back in exactly what you want. You can buy a yeast from anywhere in the world, so you can end up going around the world. You can go to Japan and taste the same beer that you would brew in America or Sweden or Norway, wherever you're going. So I quite like the idea we have a sort of sense of place. There is this character that you don't get anywhere else, and it gives us something a little bit more interesting for us, I think, just to give us that character of Adnams.
Again, it's this full circle thing. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. You probably are, being a brewer, but the New England ale yeast that everybody was kind of banging on about for years and years, they've actually traced it all the way back to being a J.W. Lee's yeast, haven't they?
I didn't know it was J.W. But it's definitely UK, yeah, definitely an English yeast. I didn't know it was J.W. Lee's, but yeah.
J.W. Lee's, yeah. I mean, of course, it's kind of like moved around a bit since then, changed, but yeah, they pulled it all the way back to J.W. Lee's, which is fascinating, really, isn't it? To think such a clean yeast can be used for a New England IPA, but it probably would have been so much more kind of fruity and flavoursome back in the day. Yeah,
I know, yeast do change over time, obviously, and they get acclimatized to where they end up being used, and over time they will adapt to that. But yeah, but I think English ale yeasts tend to have more character. They tend to add more to a beer than some of the classic sort of lager yeast strains. Most lager yeast strains are there to try and keep everything as clean as possible. Where the ale yeast should have more influence on the beer. So you should always get more yeast character when you're using an ale yeast than a lager yeast.
We got a slightly off-topic question, but it's a super chat, so I'm going to get it anyway, by Altmark B. And he's saying, any region, country to look out for in 2021 for beer?
I think it's probably been happening for a while, but I think some of the beers coming out of Italy are fantastic. If you've had any of I think that there's some fantastic beers coming out of Italy. And it's not a new thing. I think it's probably been happening over the last 3-4 years, but they still haven't hit mainstream. Or the sort of craft breweries come out of Italy. I think they're still very much a sort of very local sort of phenomenon. But yeah, any of those Italian sort of craft beers have been fantastic for me.
My wife's mother lives in Italy. She lives in Ferrara, We go twice a year. So some of the like Beer del Borgo.
Yeah, I love Beer del Borgo.
Yeah,
I know they I think they're owned by AB now or whatever, whoever they're owned by. But I think the beers are still excellent. They're still as good as they ever were.
Yeah, totally. Baladin, Beer of Baladin.
Yeah,
because there was just some, and like you say, and it's in the moment. You can let's pick a beer that wouldn't fit in this kitchen right now. Let's say a can of Stella, and that's me saying that, Fergus, not yourself. But let's say a can of Stella here in this kitchen on a winter's night. It's not the right place for it. But I was on the rooftops of the brewery in Leuven. It was a warm summer's day, and they poured me this Stella, and it actually worked. I never thought. I half of the bloggers went off to 3.10, and half of the bloggers went off to Stella. And I went off to Stella. I was in the Stella group. I didn't go to Three Fontaine where they were all drinking these wonderful sours and whatever. I was off to Stella, and I was kind of like about it, quite glum about it. But actually, I learned an awful lot while I was there. I learned so much, and drinking this Stella on the rooftop in the sunshine was, it's not like drinking it in my underground kitchen here in South Wales. You've got to be in the place, and the reason why I mention that is I had a bottle of Baladin, Beer of Baladin. It was a 750 beautifully shaped Italian bottle with their design. They love their design in Italy, don't they? And I remember being in this pear field where my mother-in-law lives, and I poured this beer out. It was nice.
Sorry, Simon, it's a pear field. What the hell is a pear field?
Where all the pear trees, with all the pear trees.
You mean an orchard, man? It's an orchard.
Brilliant. Yeah, I was in this. I was in this orchard, but this pear field. And the sun was shining. It was about 80 degrees, and it's beautiful. I remember pouring this beer. There wasn't a soul around, and there was no wind, and there was blue sky. And I think beer has its kind of place, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I think the point. Yeah, the point is things can be influenced by where you taste them. So if you go away on holiday and you're drinking some really bland, Greek lager, for one of a better one, then it does taste better because it is influenced by your mood and what you're eating and drinking, what you're thinking about. If you're sat on a really sunny coastline drinking a beer, the beer is going to taste better. If you're having a miserable day, the beer will taste crap.
Yeah, chuck the mythos over the wall. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I suppose, in that respect, do you brew beer for the seasons where you are? Like your Kobold. Yeah, I can imagine on a beautiful windless day in Southwold, it's probably the best beer in the world, isn't it? Yeah,
no, I think we do. Lots of breweries do it, but we do as well. You tend to brew lighter beers in the summer that are crisper and will go with sort of summery food more than heavier beers during the winter to go with heavier food and the heavier weather. So so I think we still do that because people still, to a degree, drink with their eyes. So we do this beer. I was saying earlier, we do a mild called Old Ale, and we've done it for years, but we only really brew it during the winter because it's dark. People automatically assume it's going to be heavy. So they stop drinking it when it starts to get lighter again. But it's not heavy at all. It's a really light, refreshing beer. But because it looks dark, people just think it's going to be heavy. So we sort of have to, we can't, we'd like to change people's opinions on it, but we can't keep trying to sell something when people stop drinking it. But then when it comes back in the winter, in the sort of November, October time, then people go mad for it. But they just stop drinking it during the summer.
Do you know, I learned an awful lot about beer on an unsuspecting day I had to go and do a talk about beer in Barry's Memorial Hall. And I remember learning so much that day because before me, the guy who got on stage was an optician.
Yeah.
And I've never learned so much in all my life in terms of beer.
I don't know where you're going with this, but okay.
I know. And it shocked me because I was like, oh, this is amazing. This optician said, in terms of your senses, 80 to 85% of your senses is through your peepers, through your eyes.
Yeah.
And I always try to relate it back to beer. And I was like, I suppose, if something's clear and it's looking, your senses is going to override your nose and your taste and everything else. So this optician taught me, he was telling me that 85% on stage, and what he was talking to me, he was talking to the crowd, but it was all done. And he was saying, that's why it's so important you get an eye test. He was filming. Yeah, he was filtering it all back to his business.
Go get an eye test, yeah. But it is true. Our brains make up a lot of decisions about what something's going to taste like before we've tasted it, because I guess our brains are designed to try and be as lazy as possible because they've got so much other stuff to do. They try and be as lazy as possible. So if they see a light beer, it's already telling your brain, oh, this tastes light and dry. If they see a dark beer, your brain's going, oh, it's sweet. So you don't need to bother tasting. You don't need to spend the energy actually processing the chemicals to work out whether it's sweet or not. I'll just tell you it's sweet, and then you can skip that bit. So you do have to try and. It sounds wrong, but you have to switch your brain off a little bit when you're tasting. That's why people sometimes taste in dark glasses so you can't see what's in it. So in proper professional tastings, you'll try and get rid of all that other stimuli, get rid of all those other things that are lying to you, and so you can just rely on your taste buds. But yeah, your eyes lie to you all the time.
Yeah, totally. And it's another reason why like yourself and myself and other bloggers and brewers out there, when they go to judge. They might taste the beer with their eyes closed, and that's just to take away that let's actually taste it and smell it.
Yeah, but for professional tasting, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to take all the. But actually, if you're out enjoying a beer, well, just bloody enjoy it. You don't need. So I think so brewers can get drawn into this party quite easily. You start doing a proper tasting on every beer you have. Well, that strips all the enjoyment out. You just have to turn that off every now and again and enjoy beer for what it is, what it's meant to be for.
Absolutely. Have you got any comments that have jumped out at you that you'd like to read
out? So Chris Rob was asking about when the mild is on sale. So it's on sale on the web now in bottles. So if you fancy some old ale, it's really nice, really licoricey. But it is a dark mild. So if you like that style of beer, then it works really well. And Andy was asking about wild hops. So every year we do this wild hop beer. I don't know if you've tasted that one, Simon, but we get people locally to go out and pick wild hops. And we get usually from the gardens or wherever they can get access to. I think we then put them all together and then we brew a beer with them. So we've got hops from this year, but we won't get packaged and probably till January. So all the hops are frozen at the moment until we can get the brew together, which then it'll be packaged in January or so.
Right. I got a super chat from Travis, $8 Australian. Travis is in Australia. He said, do they send Blackshore Stout to Australia? Only ever seen Broadside or Ghost Ship cans.
We haven't sold any Blackshore to us. It is just currently Broadside and Ghost Ship, and the vast majority of it is Ghost Ship. We sell a small bit of Broadside, but Ghost Ship most of the time. I should probably answer Mark Desmond. Should I answer Mark Desmond? He doesn't like the Kobold. It shouldn't be flat. So if you've had a flat one, there might be something wrong with it. But yeah, it should taste sparkly and crisp like a lager. So if you had something different to that, then there might be something wrong with it. But yeah,
I missed that one.
It's all right. I was wondering if you knew that one or not.
Right, Andy Layton, Fergus, you have used wild hops before when you were a young lad in the paper. Any plan to do it again, or maybe a green hop beer? Is that
That's the wild hop. Yeah, so that's the
Oh,
one.
right. We covered that one. Sorry. Pistas of Fat is taffy. I don't mind reading some of these out. Gary Hilton, how do you become a master brewer?
So there's an actual set of exams you're supposed to take. So the Institute of Brewing and Distilling sort of run this sort of series. I think there's five exams. There's a sort of series you can go through. So you can do a brewing degree in Heriot Watt, or you can go to Nottingham University and study brewing there, and then that gets you sort of partway up the ladder. And then after that, you can do another series of exams to get to be master brewer, or you can just call yourself master brewer. That's probably a lot quicker. Okay,
brilliant. Right, okay. I think we'll just. Have you drunk your broadside, Fergus?
Not all of it, Christ.
That's the trouble with me. I'm drinking every single beer. I need to maybe calm down a bit. And what should we?
Well, shall we finish off the series of collabs and do the Red Phantom?
Yeah. I've got one on the wall here. So I live in. I'll tell you a little bit about this place where I am here. I always used to curse this house. I bought this house very cheaply from a woman who used to cry at the estate agent saying, how long is this going to take to go through? And it took months because I was only a youngster back then and wasn't earning much money. And it took me a long time to get a mortgage. Finally got a mortgage, moved in the February, March. And we were going to spring and summer, and it was beautiful, lovely kind of sun rising over the houses, and it went into the winter, and I realized why she was crying. So my house is it's built into the side of a hill. So it's about where we are now, it's probably 2 meters below the ground. At the front of the house, it's a half a meter. So the lane, a lane runs down the back. And for years, as soon as October, November hits, the sun drops and there's no sun. It's really dark and black. But when I become a beer reviewer and I got sent a lot of beer, all of a sudden it became perfect. I can leave all the beer in the bar out there and all over the worktops because it's a single skin brick back wall of the house. So basically, long story short, I've left this can of Red Phantom on the back wall, single skin brickwork. Yeah. And it's the perfect temperature to drink. So I went from hating the place to like, I've got a cellar. You've got a nice cellar, yeah. Good. My kitchen's my cellar, yeah. So here we go. Magic Rock Brewing Company. Richard Burhouse, lovely fella. Do you know Richard?
Yeah, I know Richard. Really, really nice guy. So Stuart actually came down and brewed this with us during one of the bits of the year. I can't remember exactly when now, but a couple of months ago when we were actually allowed to travel. So Stu from Magic Rock came down and brewed it.
Yeah. Lovely guy.
Yeah, really, really nice company. I really like Magic Rock and always love their beers. I think we've done a couple of collabs with them in the past. We did a sort of a lemon verbena sort of beer with them about 3-4 years ago. Yeah. So it's essentially a sort of a red rye session IPA type thing. So hoppy rye red ale, really.
This is right up my street. I was drinking an Australian beer just 2 days ago, an 8% red IPA, and I always use the words that there's something about red malt or the darker malts, and when they hit the New World hops, it creates something fascinating for me. I love the flavour of the malts and the hops combining. It's beautiful, and this looks great.
Yeah, so we used
abundance. It's got that in abundance.
Yeah, yes. So it's got some Simcoe and some Amarillo hops in there, which are some of the hops out of there. Cannonball. I presume you'll know Cannonball, but fantastic. Yeah. So you get that really orangey fruit hit straight away.
It's almost like I always describe it as a candied flavour. When you mix red malts with New World hops, it gives this wonderful candied flavour off.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. It's definitely got that candied sort of sugar note to it. Really sort of gives it some body.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That really is a beautiful beer. Great stuff. So I remember, Stu, the first, I remember going up when they opened the brewery. I made a video brewery tour and whatever, and he pulled me to one side, and I think it was either him or probably Richard pulled me to one side, and he said, "Have you seen this YouTube video?" So Stuart worked for, I think he worked for Callum Island before.
Yeah.
He worked for Magic Rock, and he just filmed himself on YouTube eating a cheese sandwich. It was brilliant. No words, nothing. Just him sitting there eating a cheese sandwich. I'm not sure if he's pulled it or whatever, but it was on YouTube for a long time. And it had a lot of hits.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember that. I'll have to see if I can dig that out. That sounds amazing.
Just pulling these really funny faces, eating a cheese sandwich. It's just brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
That was his idea to YouTube. Great stuff, made me laugh. Let's have a look at some of these comments then.
And Andy asked whether she needs any more beer in his fridge. Yes, Andy, you definitely do.
Yep. Go for it. Get some more beer in the fridge. So going back, I think we should take it back and try and. I've had a few beers now, so we're going to try and be serious. But how much of a shock was this current situation with?
It was a bit of a shock, yeah. Back in March, I think we actually shut our pubs the sort of week before we were told to, because it became obvious that we couldn't run pubs because the government was saying don't go to pubs, but hadn't actually told pubs to shut at the time, which was the worst position to be in. So we decided to shut them early. But I guess the worst thing about the whole situation was probably back in February. My wife had said this is going to get really serious, and she started stockpiling food. And I was there laughing at her, saying, "No, it'll go away. It'll be all fine." And of course, I was wrong. So that is the worst thing. Now my wife is right, and I will never get over that.
I have a massive sack of rice down by the side of me here. I got the biggest sack of rice I can find. What happened to me was that, of course, my initial thought was, as soon as he started saying "please avoid," do you remember "please avoid" when he was that whole thing? And then when it shut, I thought this is it. I've earned so much from YouTube. I'm going to go to my local bottle shop, and my first instinct was to stock up on as much beer as I possibly could, because I thought that was going to be it. I was going to be kind of run dry and not closing down. So I spent £200 on different bottles and cans from bottle shops and Marks and Spencers and Tesco's, and I managed to get. I'm glad I did, because there was a little bit of a slack, if you like, in the market. But then on March the 20th, when he said, "This is it, please, the pubs are shutting," it was the first night we did the Stone Crow. It wasn't called the Stone Crow back then. It was just, my goodness me, what's happening? And we spoke about it live with everybody, and it developed into what we are today. So we've been going live every Friday, because it was a Friday, wasn't it, March the 20th? We've been live since March the 20th, every single Tuesday and Friday, ever since then. And it was the support grew. I was saying on that night that it's over. The whole thing's over. That I'm gonna have to get back on the tools, and the channel's gone and it's finished. And the support we've had over the last 6 months is longer than that now, 8-9 months. It's been absolutely fantastic, and we've grown from 300,000 views a month last Christmas to over 500,000 views a month this where we are today. Yeah. And it's been amazing. The support. Have you found that same level of support? Where people
I think as soon as it sort of happened, the web sales just went crazy because people still wanted to buy it, and they just they found different ways than they would normally have gone. So I think the support locally has been great. I think the support when pubs have been allowed to open, I think that the vast majority of people have been fantastic in trying to follow the rules and understand that the staff aren't there to spoil your fun. They're just trying to make sure that they can stay open and still run a business. So I think the support from customers has been great. And I think I don't want to say anything nice about the government usually, but I think the sort of furlough scheme was for employed people was a lifesaver for the vast majority. They haven't got everything right by any means, and I think the support for pubs in these sorts of times is not enough. And I think in Wales they've essentially shut pubs, but at least they put in some. It looks like from outside, it looks like they put in some good support for pubs. But I think that needs to happen across the rest of the country as well, in England and Scotland as well. So I think there's been support from lots of people, but I think there's still more. I think the government needs to do to make sure pubs survive until probably April. It's hard to say exactly when stuff will get back to normal, but I think probably April time, once enough people have been vaccinated, that restrictions get lifted. But I think that's probably where we'll end up.
What's the morale been like? Obviously, you're part of a group of brewers who probably talk to each other a lot. As I found on a personal level on this channel that I've been on the phone to brewers, and there's points where there's absolute moments of despair, where there's no end to this. And is it a togetherness? Have you had togetherness in the brewing?
Yeah, I think we have a couple of head brewer groups, so we sort of get together sort of twice a year, specifically just to talk about issues that we have, whether it's running the brewery or sort of technical issues. Because actually, if you're a head brewer, there isn't really anyone else typically you can sort of talk to who has exactly the same problems as you within your brewery. So having that head brewer group is really useful because you can do that sort of stuff. But I guess the most amazing thing I think was at the very start of this, before we knew there was going to be a furlough scheme, before we knew what was going to happen, we had to sort of we knew pubs were shutting. We didn't know what was going to happen after that, and we had to talk to the staff. And the sort of the brewers and everyone else at Adnams and say, listen, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where we're going to end up. But everyone took it on the chin, and I think so. It's one of the things when you join a company like Adnams that's been around that long, you sort of join it as a sort of custodian. You join it because you want that brewery, that business to survive and be there for the next generation. And the most amazing thing was that everyone had exactly the same view. No matter whether they'd been working there for a year or 10 years or 20 years, everyone just took the view that we need to make sure the business survives. And that was sort of front and foremost for everyone. So which was amazing. And I think that it was the most difficult conversation we thought we'd ever have, but it turned into one of the sort of most amazing things because everyone basically got behind it and said, we want to make this business survive, even though we don't know how long we're going to have to put up with it.
Yeah.
We don't know when the end is going to be in sight, but we will do everything we can to make it survive.
It was a funny. It seems like we were on the same kind of path where, to begin with, in late March, it was so uncertain. But by looking now in mid, we're going into mid-December, the togetherness, the will really to make this great old industry that we all know and love survive. It's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and I think it helps. Obviously, I think it helps now that we know there's an end point. We don't know exactly when it is, but we know there's an end point next year. And I think that helps. It's really hard to keep going when you don't know how you're running around the dark, when you don't know how long you're going to be in the dark for. So knowing there's going to be something at the end of it is going to be really useful to keep people going, I think.
Brilliant. So 2021. I'd like to think hopefully we can be all sitting in a beer garden. Maybe the Great British Beer Festival happening again. Do you think that's possible? Some of the festivals, the great old festivals of old, where everybody gets together to celebrate this industry.
Yeah, I think so. I think the second half of next year, that's definitely possible. It depending on a lot of things still, but I think that's definitely possible. So yeah, and I think it'll be such a relief to actually sit around and have a real beer. Well, not real, have a real meeting over a beer.
Yeah, totally. I had a comment earlier. It's gone, but I read it. How many of your 5 litre mini keg? Is it just the Go Ship that's in a 5 litre mini keg, or do you do more?
No, we do a whole range. I think the Go Ship's the one that's most easily available because it's in most of the supermarkets. But we do dry up lager, we do Broadside, we do our Southwell bitter, we do some old ale, we do some mosaic, we do some ease up. So yeah, we do quite a range of things in 5 litre minis. They're not always in stock all the time, but yeah, we try and keep a good range in there.
Yeah. What's your favourite other brewery, Fergus? Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just reading a comment. And your go-to beer for me, it will be Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale, and I'm going to rush off to the toilet. Get everything.
Oh God. So obviously, there's lots of amazing breweries. So I think in the UK, I think Burning Sky is a fantastic brewery. I think Lost and Grounded are amazing. I think there's Utopia. I think there's so many amazing breweries at the moment. I think it's probably one of the best times to be a beer drinker. If you're sort of going further afield, I do really love what Beer de Borger do. Sierra Nevada is fantastic and probably one of the most consistent beers I think over the last 15, 20 years. Fantastic brewery. I still have all this stuff is sort of emotional, really, isn't it? But I think probably something like the Alchemist Heady Topper is probably a beer that whenever I see it, just gives me really happy memories, and it's a beer I go straight to. You don't see it very often, but usually in the US. But yeah, that's a beer I go to quite a lot. All right, let's see what else is down here. How long have I been with Adnams? So I joined Adnams in 2004, and then took over as head brewer at about 2008. So quite a while now. And then I was at Fuller's Brewery in London for about 7 years before that, and then a very short stint at Murphy's in Ireland before I took the trip over the Channel. And then someone's asking about favourite Irish brewery. So I guess when I left Ireland, there weren't that many craft breweries. It's a long time since I lived in Ireland properly, and I think the choice of breweries, choice of beer when I left was pretty minuscule, really. It was sort of Guinness, Smithwick's. And maybe some Harp Lager, but now there are some fantastic Irish breweries. I had some Yellow Belly the other day. What else have I had recently? Some of the Rye River stuff is fantastic. Whiplash is an amazing brewery. I think that they've had some fantastic breweries start up in the last 10 years or so. Much change since the last time I was over there.
I went over to Kilkeel. Near Newcastle.
Oh yeah,
Northern Ireland.
Yeah,
and I brewed a beer with Beer Hut Brewing Company. We called it not Simple Simon, but Simcoe Simon. Double dry hop New England IPA. I had an amazing time. In we went to the Belfast Camera event. We had some great beer. And then we went to, you just mentioned them, Northern, they had a great bar in Belfast. Is that the country we were talking about? Not South.
Well, I was probably more talking about Republic, but no. I'd say I don't know that many breweries in Northern Ireland really, but you probably know more about the Northern Irish breweries than I do.
Oh, brilliant! And they gave me what they did. They sent me the 2 different Tato crisps, the cheese onion. Oh, so I did a review: Tato crisps versus Tato crisps.
Yes, for those who don't know, Tato Crisps is a brand of crisps in Ireland, and there is a Northern Irish Tato and a Southern Irish Tato crisp, and there is also a Tato World.
There is, yes.
Tato World, and obviously Big Kev, my favourite crisp is Tato's.
They are brilliant. The cheese and onion, just incredible. And they do the Tato craft now as well, don't they? Where they do like big 150 gram bags of beef and onion, and they're amazing, big thick crisps. But talking about the crisps, what struck me when I got off the aeroplane, it was Tato everywhere. The advertising boards. It wasn't Walker's. It was like they had that. They had it nailed down that it was going to be like Tato everywhere you went. The vending machines were full of Tato crisps. But I liked that. I thought I've actually gone somewhere different. You know, like these zombie town centres where everything's the same. I got off the plane after I was only on the plane 45 minutes, and bang, here we are. And it felt like a different place. It felt like flying off to Poland or whatever, because you guys had your own identity.
Yeah, I think that's the nice thing about traveling, is you actually get to see something different. So when you go somewhere and the high street looks exactly the same as the high street you came from, well, that's disappointing. You want something that looks a bit different, so you know you've been abroad, rather than just suddenly find out you've just been fooled into walking down the same street you normally walk down.
Whoa. I've got a really, answer it or not, Fergus, but I've got a really interesting question here from Jacob Wright, and he says, BrewDog divide opinion. What does Fergus think of them? I missed it, moved. And what do they do? And on what they do?
So I think BrewDog have been amazing, I have to say. I think if you go back to when they first started off, there was so many other breweries started off at the same time, and BrewDog have just grown and grown and grown and grown.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part the beers have been great. I think that like every brewery that's grown, you have some growing pains as you stretch your capacity and can't quite do everything you'd like to be able to do. But I think in the main they've done really well, and the beers have been great. I think in terms of the way they do PR, I think has obviously revolutionised the way people want to do PR. It's not how I would do it. You know, I would never have the balls to do anything like they've done, but then I haven't got a multi-million-pound business, so there's something to be said for that. I've got huge respect for what the guys at BrewDog have done. I think you can knock them down for some of the way they've done things, but actually, without doing that in the early days, they wouldn't have got the publicity they did, and they wouldn't have been able to build up as quickly as they did. So they've gotten craft beer, good beer, into every supermarket that you can possibly think of. Much faster than probably would have happened otherwise. So I think I've got huge respect for what BrewDog have done.
They're like the beacon, aren't they? The beacon that you always remember, Punk, when it was a 6% beer. It was terrific. It was always a really, really good beer. And I remember the start of all of this, where I think James Watt put a tweet out saying, I'm just going to grab my sleeping bag and take it to the brewery, because, the captain, he always called himself the captain anyway, didn't he?
Yeah.
The captain stays at the front of the ship type of thing. And he put a very emotional letter out where he was grabbing his sleeping bag. He wasn't going to see his family. This blooming business is going to survive. And at the end of the day, we all did that, didn't we? We all kind of went, right. And it's only down to the love of the stuff we have in the glass. But not just the beer. We talked about this extensively tonight. The company, the friends you meet, the missing the travel of it all. None of us wanted that to just disappear and go away. We all just like knuckled down, and in the face of adversity, really, with the I've had a beer or two now, so the taxation and everything else that we face in this industry, that we're ready to carry on with it all.
Yeah, but it comes back to what beer's meant to be about. It's not just about the taste of it, and it is about community. It is about bringing people together. beer is meant to be a social drink. It is, and that's why people feel so strongly about it, because beer is often at the heart of when we get friends together, or when we've had a really shit time, or we've had a great time. Beer is often at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And the best times you've had drinking beer isn't sat in front of your TV alone. It's when you've been out with other people. And even if it's the shittest beer you can imagine, if you're having a good time with friends, then it's a great beer. So that's why people feel strongly about it, because it is about getting people together and actually those interactions and that social cohesion, and that's why pubs are so important, really, because they do get people together, get people mixing who wouldn't normally mix. Get people talking to people who they wouldn't normally say hello to.
Even more controversial, it's something I've thought important in government. It probably happens in Germany and Belgium because they have such a high regard for their brewers, and not just for the brewers, but for the economic, the money that the brewing industry brings in. Should there be somebody who is very close to the beer industry and knows how it all works? Should there be somebody in government that works closely with the government about our industry? Because I remember in the 2008, the big depression, or the recession as we called it, I remember watching television programs where they were trying to get old sock companies up and running and make socks and bring back the old fashioned industry. But we already had it. We already had that blooming, the brewing industry was there. It was alive. Yeah.
So I think there's a petition going around at the moment. So if anyone can see, there's a petition to try and get a hospitality minister, so someone who will look after pubs particularly. I think we can talk about breweries, but actually it's the pub side and the hospitality side particularly that needs the help right now. So I think there is a petition going around. So if anyone's on social media, then you can find it. I can't remember what the link is, but there is a link. I can't remember what the hashtag is, but there is a hashtag. But yeah, so I think that would be useful, having someone who does talk about the hospitality industry in its wider sense, because there's so many people involved in hospitality in the UK, and it affects so many businesses, not just breweries, but other suppliers that feed into that hospitality. So while food suppliers in particular are obviously really struggling at the moment, because if they're normally supplying food into pubs, if you're in some of the tier 3 areas, then half your business is gone at the moment.
I've not even thought of that. In the last 8 months, that's not even crossed my mind, and it's just incredible to think that. I got one from Eric Grandland. Favorite Swedish craft brewery, Fergus? Thanks for the chat.
Yeah, I probably don't know enough Swedish craft breweries to comment properly. I think was it Garage Brewery? They were Swedish, aren't they? I think the Garage Brewery was Swedish. They did some great beers. I can't say I drink enough Swedish craft beer to be able to comment properly. I had 2 trips to Sweden, I think. Tasted some great beers. It was the Stockholm Beer and Whiskey Festival, I think.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It was a great trip. I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was a great trip.
I've brewed, not to put you on the spot, but just to say, I've been to Sweden twice to brew beers. I brewed a beer called Torfita Grisa, and do you know what that means?
I do not.
The Two Fat Pigs Brewery.
Okay.
Torfita Grisa, the Two Fat Pigs Brewery, and then I went to Bruskival. Have you heard of Bruskival? That's incredible. We must get you over there to Bruskival in next year if it's on. Yeah. This year was cancelled, of course. So it would be great to have Adnams there. All the Angry Chair Brewing Company from America, they were all there. The half brewing company. Yeah, there was all the top class. From England, there was Wylam from Newcastle.
Yeah, really good brewery.
Adnams. I mean, they should be, for me, they should be there just for the variety. I've drunk tonight really good hoppy beer, really good red ales.
Yeah, you would have a really nice malty beer. But
I was about I was about to say, well, I won't say that one. But we are. I don't know how much time you've got, Fergus. How much time do you have?
It's up to you. I've got a bit more time.
You got a bit more time.
As long as you have time to have a cup of tea before bedtime, that'll do.
We're going to enter the. So I knock off at 10 o'clock. So it's 9 o'clock now.
Another hour's fine.
We're entering the witching hour.
As long as you can keep going, that's fine.
You're doing much better. You must have much better Celtic blood than I do. I'm all red-faced and about to explode.
It's the really professional lighting system I've got here.
Yeah, and dizzy. But we're in the witching hour. We're in the last hour of the show. It's been absolutely fantastic having you on. We've got a couple of big beers here. We got Tally Ho and the Triple Not Triple to get through. Yeah. Paul's beer reviews. Fantastic question tonight. I think this is just Paul. He normally comes through with a load of jokes. He hasn't come through with a joke tonight. Maybe this is a jokey one. I'm so close to going out and grabbing some Ghost Ship now. The power of advertising. So I think that's Paul in having a laugh, having a bit of a laugh.
Make it a 4-pack at least. It'll be worth a while.
Yeah. So what do you reckon, Fergus? Tally Ho or Triple Not?
Let's go Tally Ho first, and then we can finish on Triple. I think Matthew was asking about whether we get any beers to the US. We have in the past, but I think the US is a really difficult market, which if you live in the US, you probably know in terms of getting beer over there. But I think the plan is to try and get some beer over there next year. We do actually get some whiskies, yeah. So I think the whiskey started going out there earlier this year. So if you get the chance to try the whiskies, then I think the rye whiskey in particular is fantastic. So Jonathan Adnams, so I probably didn't say earlier on, but it's still a family brewery, and Jonathan Adnams is still heavily involved. He's chairman, and he grows some rye. So we get that rye malted, and then we buy that rye in, and we use that to make rye whiskey. Really, really nice whiskey, aged for sort of 5 to 7 years at the moment, in sort of European oaks. Really nice whiskey, sort of bourbon-esque sort of whiskey, if you like that sort of thing. But yeah, if you can get the whiskey, I think it's really good.
Andy, I've had a few comments about the witching hour.
Yeah.
Andy Layton saying, "Tally ho, Simon! You won't survive that and the Triple Not." And another one saying, "Fergus is going to end he's going to be the one ending the live stream tonight."
Big Kev asked about Adnams keg on beer machines. So we only do the 5-litre mini kegs at the moment, which you can get beer machines for, but they're, I guess, a bit more fiddly. Whereas things like the Perfect Draft, which is the sort of, I think, AB InBev sort of system, we can't fill into those because it's not our choice and it's not our system.
Wow.
So I'm just being interrupted to pass some dregs. But yeah, so I think we'd love to put something into something like the Perfect Draft system, but that's really down to the owners of the system, because they would buy the beer in and package it into those sort of Perfect Draft kegs rather than us doing it. So yeah, we'd love to do it, not our choice though.
Again, with this home bar, everybody's building a home bar in the world at the moment. I was sent a machine. Normally, can't think of the name of the company. They're from Birmingham. Hand pull system.
Yeah.
They opened up a company called Pint 365. So they jumped on that home bar system.
Yeah.
And they've got the what's the word? The rights, the copyright for the bag in the box system. Do you know the red tap where you kind of like red wine?
Push it down.
That's it. So they've got a system where it clamps onto that, holds it down, and it'll feed a line of beer into a hand pull.
Yeah.
They were really kind enough to send me a system back in the summer.
Yeah.
On our bar, we've got an actual working hand pull from Pint 365.
Yeah.
So, long story short, in October they said, you haven't used the machine for a while. We've worked out a hack for it. What you do is you grab a screwdriver, knock the bung into the 5 litre keg. You knock the bung in.
Yeah.
Just feed the line into the 365, and then you've got cask ale. So the lovely keg that you guys sent me, I'll review that on a hand pull. I'll show everybody how to do it and get the hammer and the screwdriver and knock the bung in, and then we'll put the tube in and we'll have a hand pulled ghost ship.
Yeah.
Right. So look out for that in the future.
Okay.
The hand pulled ghost ship.
I will. You have to send me a link when you're doing it. So Tally-Ho. So Tally-Ho is our oldest beer. So this was brewed first. So we've got this was brewed when Adnams was formed, sort of in 1872. We've got recipe books going back to 1879, and that's sort of the oldest book we have, and Tally-Ho's in there. But as far as we can tell, it was actually brewed even before Adnams formed. So by the people who used to own the Sobey Brewery, the brewery that before it was Adnams. So the only time this brew has not been brewed was because of the 2 world wars. So every other time it's been brewed. It would have, so at 7.2%. We think it was probably 8% in the early 1900s. So it's come down a little bit. It was probably a little bit lighter, not too much, but a little bit lighter than it is now. But we call it a barley wine now. But in its day, it would have just been a normal strong ale. It would have been brewed week in, week out.
Yeah.
It's only really in the last 40, 50 years that it's become a sort of rarity, really. And now we just brew it once a year, sort of Christmas time. Usually put into cask as well, but this year, so there's quite a nice tradition locally of pubs sort of buying 5 or 6 casks, and they'll open one at Christmas, and they'll keep the others for the sort of bank holidays through the year. Sometimes they'll end up with casks that are 2 years old in the cellar.
Wow!
And you get sort of some nice age character, and the Tally-Ho ages really well. All that sort of raisiny note sort of builds up and really works with the beer. So this is the batch you've got. I think it's 2019. So we put the year on. So nice raisiny sort of notes to it. A little bit of that sort of sherry characteristic. So this would have been bottled last sort of November time-ish.
Oh, brilliant. I was part of that famous Great British Beer Festival, the Guild of Beer Festival event. Can you remember that famous night back in 2009, I think?
2009? No, I don't remember.
I think everybody got drunk on Pete Brown and Melissa. We all got drunk on Tally-Ho and
Good.
those, yeah. Famous night, but it's smelling beautiful.
Yeah, you get all that sort of plum fruit as well, sort of plum and raisins, and really all that sort of dark fruits.
But nutty brown bread at the same time.
Yeah, you definitely get that bready. Yeah, brown bread's a good description.
Yeah, definitely.
Sort of sultana, sort of fruit loaf sort of stuff.
Prunes and I'm going to dive in. Cheers,
But yeah, I know it's Tally-Ho is part of the tradition at Adnams, so it's a beer that we'll always brew, even if it gets down to tiny amounts. It'll be something we keep doing.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I don't want to turn this into a beer review live, but that is. Look at the lacing. Look at the lacing on that. Beautiful. Look at it. Look at that rock in the. Can you see the carbonation chasing the head? I always say that in my beer reviews. Look at the carbonation chasing the head of the glass. And I call myself an apprentice because I started drinking beer on YouTube, not really knowing what I was talking about. I remember going to see Jim Robinson at Wells and Young's all those years ago. The very early times of me in beer.
When they were doing the Courage Imperial Stout, the Russian.
Yes.
Yeah.
and he pulled me up and he said, look, he could tell I was learning, and he said, have a look at that. You rock the beer back and forth. He said, the smaller the bubble, he said, the better the beer. You will look at that. You will not get a smaller bubble than that. Look at that, Fergus. Is that true, or is that just an old wives' tale? The smaller the bubble, the better the beer.
I think the smoother the beer, definitely. I think if you've got, so typically you get small bubbles if it's a natural fermentation. So the more CO2, more carbonation that's from the actual fermentation, typically you get that smaller bubble. So it's quite normal in something like champagne, where you get this really nice, fine sort of mousse of bubbles. And that's because it's that natural fermentation, you get smaller bubbles. So it tends to have a slightly smoother flavor to it. Whereas CO2 is an acidic gas, so it actually does add some acidity in. But by keeping them a little bit smaller, you tends to be slightly smoother than acidic.
Oh, it's beautiful. Nutty, raisiny, biscuity. Oh, yeah. It's a shame, isn't it, that we're you put a football game on and you're covered in green adverts for green beer, green bottled beer. It's a real shame that beers like this they've stood the test of time. You've been brewing it for 130, 140 years. It's really wonderful. Yeah, and it would have, if you stitch it back, if you take yourself back to, like you said, we were talking about IPAs earlier on, where they were maybe 5.5, 6% ABV. So back in the day, they would have been drinking these 5-6% beers and then gone, I fancy, just to finish off my evening, I fancy something a little bit stronger, like a tally-ho or something. Because we all finish our night with one big one, don't we? And this would have been it. This would have been the beer that you've had a few of the IPAs, you've had a few of the stronger ales, but you just want to polish your night off with something really decent. Am I too far from the?
No. I think people still like to end the night with something special. It's probably the worst time to drink it because at the end of the night your palate's already basically fecked up. So you really want to be tasting that beer you've been saving for 5 years that you're going to open on a special occasion. Opening that on a random Wednesday night after you've had 20 beers before that. That's probably the worst time to open that beer.
Yeah,
you want to do it when you actually taste it properly, but it's not. It's a pretty common thing to do. Yeah.
It always seems so rational at that time, though, doesn't it? It always seems so rational to do it at that time, rather than do I open a 7% beer on a Tuesday night where I've had no beer?
Yeah.
Your mind plays tricks on you. But then again, and I get this. Or how many times have you had this in your brewing industry career where somebody will turn to you and go, that's as strong as wine? How many times do you get that? That frustrates me. That really frustrates me when somebody goes, that's as strong as a glass of wine. I've got no answer to that. I go,
yes, but you're sort of meant to drink it in the same quantities as wine as well. You're not. You're meant to have a glass of it, not 4 pints of it. So yeah. It's beautiful. It really is. It's and not because Fergus is with me and watch me. I'd be doing the same thing as if I had it on my own. It's beautiful lacing, beautiful. I love to look at a beer. Even though we were talking about not to look at a beer earlier on, I love to look at a good quality beer like this and just marvel in its delights. Yeah.
So we got any comment? Oh, we got beers of Europe here. Can I ask you a question, Fergus? Because this is something that has been on my mind for a while, and maybe I'm being slightly controversial. We mentioned the great man Michael Jackson earlier on, the beer blogger who he used to make his way onto American television. He passed away in 2006. I think he passed away in 2006. There's been a great void ever since. In vlogging terms, there's been a great void. It's taken a lot longer for. But nobody will ever step in that man's footsteps in any way, because he designed styles, he designed glassware, all of the stars. Some of the stars we know and love today were designed by Michael Jackson. But do you think somebody in the beer industry deserves to be on late night television just to promote it, like
how late at night, Simon?
Yeah, like the American late night television programs.
Yeah, I think. So Michael Jackson, essentially, what he did was open the world up to and give a structure so people could understand what beer styles were. So before that, I think people didn't really even know, what really beer styles were, and certainly around the world, all those sort of what we would consider normal now, like a German Weissbier, we sort of know what that is, but no one before Michael Jackson outside of Germany and very few places really knew what those beer styles were. So he just opened the world of beer up to outsiders and tried to explain it in a way that made sense. So in terms of anyone new, I think beer definitely, for me, deserves that sort of platform to be able to show what's out there. And I think there are some great, I think it's a horrible word, but communicators. There are some great beer communicators out there. So I think there is every potential that someone could go on and sort of help communicate that around the world. So if you've ever seen someone like Garrett Oliver talk, he's amazing. He's a brewer as well, but he can enthuse anyone about anything to do with beer. And the way he talks about it is fantastic. So someone like Garrett Oliver for me could easily do that job.
It's something, because I always see it's something that's always boiled my, frustrated me. When you look at the food industry, somebody will quite happily watch Jamie Oliver knock up some fancy ham and peas sandwich, and they'll spend half an hour, and they'll be influenced by that. And that's the word, like you said earlier on. What was the word you used? Not influence. You used a different word.
Communicator, I think I said.
Exactly, communicator. Yeah. I think we're all set up now. We've got fantastic breweries all around the world brewing amazing styles of beer. All it needs is for somebody to step up on that big stage and communicate that message, like Jamie Oliver's ham and cheese sandwich, or like Gordon Ramsay, or the guys doing the Bake Off. It just needs that finishing touch, that finishing. Yeah.
Well, it needs someone needs to be given the opportunity, because I think there's absolutely plenty of people. So if you've seen Jaeger Wise on the sort of wine show, she's amazing. She talks about beer really well, passionately, explains it really well. So she could do that job. But they need to be given the platform, and obviously Jaeger's got a little bit of that platform now, but still not quite enough to be given a whole show on beer. But hopefully it's building, and I think as people see there's more interest in it, then more people will get interested in watching it, and therefore the TV companies or networks will actually give people more time to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just that's I've always, especially the last 2 years, I thought that's the missing piece. That's the missing piece. We can all cook breakfast, and somebody then like Jamie Oliver who will step up on that stage and go, "This is brilliant." We just need that one. And I think it's slightly frustrating that Michael Jackson was slightly before his time. He went on these late night shows, and it was, it was just slightly before his time. Really, he did it before.
Yeah, but you could also say if Michael Jackson didn't do what he did, a lot of the breweries here, today wouldn't exist, because he helped talk about what was out there and got more and more people. So lots of the big craft breweries that we talk about today wouldn't exist otherwise than for Michael. So whether we'd even be in a position to be able to talk about it without Michael, I think is probably up for debate. And just in the comments, it is definitely a different Michael Jackson.
Oh yeah. Sorry. We haven't touched on that. So Michael Jackson was a fantastic beer writer. I think the story goes that he was going to go somewhere else on the train. He ended up in Belgium by accident, apparently.
Okay. No, I don't know.
He got off of Belgium and he stayed there for a week drinking. and if it wasn't for he jumped on the wrong train and headed off into a different country, apparently this whole thing, it's almost like a fairy tale, isn't it? It's wonderful, wonderful fairy tale.
Yeah.
Of course, people aspire to it. Of course they do. Of course, people, there's a lot of bloggers and vloggers who especially, I think they sense an opportunity once, things opened up. But it never happened. Those late night shows, like the door closed, the book shut. And I think somebody needs to jump out and do that thing again, because how many people back in the day were brewing imperial stouts in Michael Jackson's day in the UK and double IPAs? I think the New England IPA style didn't exist.
No, it would have been. Yeah.
And that's everywhere now. Somebody needs to get out and tell that story, I think.
Yeah, I think there was some great stories about breweries and beer, and I think that's what people relate to, is the story. I think trying to tell someone the distaste of raisins or plums or whatever is interesting to a small group of people, but most people are interested in the actual stories out there. So that's what we need to tell.
Yeah, totally. Any comments that's jumped out at you, Fergus?
I've got the pretty regular question about why Broadside is 4.7 in K. So we do two versions of Broadside. So we do the bottle version, which is the original version, and if you look at the bottom, so it does say strong original just down there. Strong original.
Yeah.
That was the original beer in 1972, and then by the time they got to the mid 80s, and you're too young to remember this, I guess now, Simon, but by the time they got to the mid 80s, cask beer was having this sort of resurgence. And bottled beer was actually dying, and before then, actually, most bottled beer was sold in pubs. It was to mix with other beers. But mid 1980s or so, cask beer was having this big resurgence, and Adnams wanted another cask beer. Everyone liked Broadside, and Broadside had sort of become a sort of firm favourite, but its bottled ale sales were declining. But they didn't think it would work as a 6.3% cask beer, so they did a version around 4.7. So we ended up with two versions of Broadside, the original at 6.3 and the one on cask at 4.7. And that's the story of that.
I'd love to know, we talked about Tally Ho, the history of Tally Ho. What is the actual history of Broadside? What year did it start being brewed? And
so the original bottled beer was 1972. And it was brewed as a one-off, so it's not that long ago. Seems a bit longer, but not that long. So in the scheme of Adnams, I guess. So 1972, but it was brewed as the celebration of the tricentenary of the Battle of Sow Bay. And the Battle of Sow Bay was one of several Dutch wars, obviously in the 1670s or so. It was one of a series of Anglo-Dutch wars, and so where the brewery is, we're right on the coast. And there's a pub called the Sow Bay Inn. And the story is that the English fleet were all in the pubs around Southwold having a few bevies. And then the Dutch fleet came into view on the horizon. And so they all had to rush off and go and fight the Dutch. And I guess the weird thing is that it's not really a particularly famous war, or this particular episode of it anyway. But the Dutch claim they won. And the English claim they won, and so as far as I can tell, that's a draw.
Yeah.
So then 300 years later, Adnams decided to brew this beer to celebrate this draw. So I've no idea why they brewed it, but they did, and I'm very glad they did, because it is an absolute wonderful beer. And it's we do a sort of daily tasting at the brewery, where we taste the beers from from the day before, or the shelf life beers, just to make sure everything's tasting the way it should. But the last beer, almost always, the last beer is a broadside, just to round off the tasting session.
Is it your number one selling beer, but with bottle and cask?
No. Go Ship is by far the number one across every format really that we sell it in. In cask, Southwold Bitter used to be, but Southwold Bitter, very classically English traditional bitter, fantastic beer, but it was very much a sort of local sort of beer. And outside of East Anglia, then Broadside used to be number one, but overall Southwold Bitter was. And then when Go Ship became a permanent, it just started growing and growing and growing. Yeah. And so now Go Ship is across every format: cask, bottle, can, keg. It's number one.
It's funny, isn't it? Because if I was walking down the street and somebody said Adnams, I go Broadside. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say Go Ship, but it would be. You know,
We'd have people come up from Cornwall on holiday, and they'd go into one of the local pubs and say, "I'll have a pint of Adnams." Now, this was an Adnams pub, and there was like four different Adnams beers on the bar. And then, so because Southwold Bitter is what most people mean, they'd pour them a pint of Southwold Bitter and they'd hand it over, and then they'd throw it back at them and say, "That's not Broadside." And I said, "No, it's not Broadside," because in Cornwall, the only Adnams beer you could get at the time was really Broadside, and that's what they thought we did. But actually, it was Southwold Bitter was the number one. But like I said, now it's Go Ship.
You guys. I'm just going to come out and say regional brewery, because that's my take on the whole thing. You're the only regional brewery really who stuck by their guns and stayed with relatively strong beer. Tally Ho, Broadside. Is that your close relations to Belgium and Germany and Europe, or because you come down our way, and for years and years and years, the only the question would be, I brewed a beer called Barry Island IPA, and it was 6% ABV, and the biggest challenge was the 6% ABV. It was completely impossible. It was all bright bitter. The whole of the South Wales valleys were drinking all bright bitter at 3.2% ABV.
Yeah.
So below the South Wales valleys, you have Cardiff. So we had a beer then called SA, which was the Samuel Arthur beer. And it wasn't, people didn't associate it with Samuel Arthur. They call it SA, meant skull attack. Because it was 4.5. And that's a true story. Everybody was drinking 3.2% beer up in the South Wales Valley, digging their coal and whatnot. And then they come down to Cardiff for the weekend. They drink something 1% ABV more, and it was called Skull Attack. So imagine.
It's a sort of generational thing, isn't it? I think if you want to drink 7 pints or something, that's that idea of drinking a lot of volume. Then of course you don't want to have anything too strong. But it's just that idea you have to change change your drinking habits a bit. If you're going to drink something that high, you drink less of it. But I think one of the things that keeps us a bit, and there are other people doing stronger beers, but I think one of the things that keeps us a bit sort of independent is the fact we're geographically we're sort of out in a limb. We're out in this little pokey corner of sort of East Anglia, where you don't drive past accidentally. You sort of have to want to go there. Yeah. So I think that generates a little bit of independence of spirit, I guess. So I think that's one of the reasons we do some of the things that the rest of the industry looks at and thinks that's a bit weird. Why are you doing that? So when we put the distillery in, everyone thought we were crazy, because it's not something breweries do, and particularly old breweries, it's not something they do. So I think having that separation and just physically separation, I think does make you think a little bit differently. And I saw something pop up a minute ago about saying that Adnams would sell out in 5 years' time. Absolutely no chance in hell. Jonathan Adnams has been part of that brewery for all his working life, and the main thing everyone talks about is sustainability, and not just environmentally, but about making sure that business is there for the next generation. So I can guarantee, within reason, that is absolutely not in anyone's head. Independence and staying independent is a huge part of what Adnams is about.
I got a question here. Let's see if I can read it before it disappears. Right, here we are. I'd say it's a regional 2. I'm a Brum. Our bestseller was a 3.6% ABV. Down here, our bestseller is a 4.5% ABV. So, Blue Nose Beer Reviews. Harry, how you doing, Harry? Thanks for watching. Fellow beer tuber on YouTube. He's gone down. He was working in, lived in Birmingham, made his way down to Wiltshire. I think off the top of my head, I might swear at Harry now. Harry's gone down to Wadsworth, maybe, or another brewery of that. Marlborough of Wiltshire. So their beer is 4.5, but when he was in Birmingham, so I think maybe it was possibly a grand city thing where whenever we went to a big city like Cardiff or Birmingham, London, the beers were generally 3.6% ABV. That was the best sellers. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's a few calls for you to open this now.
Oh, right. Okay. We will. Where are we? 9:30. Yeah, we got go for this time and get the air fryer on. So if I do the live feeds on my own on a Tuesday, I generally grab something out the freezer and start frying it up and cooking.
Okay.
We won't be doing any of that tonight. I will get a triple knot out. If you could, I got to ask you a question before I go to the toilet. How on earth have you not been to the toilet yet?
Well, because I've got a load of full bottles over here. I'm just tasting.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I'm trying not to go because once I go, I'll have to go again.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I'll be back in a moment. Sorry, Fergus.
That's all right. I'll have a look and see if there's any other questions on there. Right. I have to scroll down on that. Yeah, one more beer. I think that's his third or fourth time to go tonight. Right. Maguire's having a stinker. Does that mean Man U are playing? Adnams are entirely English and posh. Not particularly. I think most people don't know Adnams particularly well. I think they know what they think Adnams is going to be, but I don't think posh is the word I'd use. We do want to, we want things to sell that make us money and sell to make the brewery profitable, but posh is not a word I would use for it. Oh yeah, Jonathan comes in his shorts, in his flip flops. We'd have to tell him not to, but he does. What else is on here? Okay. What's on here? Right. So what beers do I enjoy? So generally at the moment, the stuff I've got in my garage ready for Christmas, I've got some Burning Sky. I really like some sour beers, and Burning Sky for me do the best English, well, UK sour beers. They're always a must. Lager styles, I've got lots of Lost and Grounded from over in Bristol way. They do fantastic, whole range of fantastic beers, but their lagers are particularly a highlight. What else have I got? Some Thornbridge, again, great variety of beer, but again they do some fantastic barrel-aged sours. So I've got loads of those in the garage. It's probably the one biggest issue with the lockdown is you end up buying lots of really strong beers, and then you find out you've got to drink them all before Christmas, or hopefully try and drink them all before Christmas.
I'm doing dry January.
Okay.
I'm definitely doing dry January. I'm gonna. I did it last year, and it was going to be a pretty easy year.
Yeah.
I'm going to channel into more of a food channel, and then everything changed. And here we are in December. I've got. So last year, Fergus, I got to Christmas, and I reviewed the last beer I was doing what you're doing now, basically tasting and throwing, and I managed to clear by Christmas my whole backlog, and it was all gone. And I was, yes, but this December I've got about 350 beers, so there's no chance of clearing the backlog this year. I'm going to finish off this tally ho.
I'm going to answer 2 questions. So Troy wants to know if we're going to do homebrew kits. No plans to at the moment. We have looked at the past, but no plans to at the moment. There was one from Danny. He's from Wicklow. I'm from Limerick, sort of just on the border with Cork. So just not far from where JP McManus lives. He actually bought our old GEA field and turned it into the entrance to his house, and then built a new GEA field just across the way. So that's where I'm from. What else is down here? Okay, Gun Hill. No plans to brew it at the moment. Did well for a while, but then dropped off. It's one of the things with any brewery. At some point, you're doing beers that not enough people want to drink, and it just the age gets out of whack, and the beer's not really where you want it to be anymore. And Ola Duv is, I can't know if that's pronounced properly, but Ola Duv is an amazing beer. Harvestune are a great brewery.
Yeah.
And yes, I am a Monster fan.
We've got my good friend Mark, the beer hooligan, in. He runs another beer channel, and he says that triple knot is lush, mate. He knows. It's. I think it's caught on the paper. There we go. Have you heard of Duval Gate?
I haven't heard of Duval Gate. No.
Duval Gates.
What's that about?
So we got together as beer tubers, and the whole man versus food. Have you seen these programs where people eat crazy amounts of food?
Yeah.
So we come up with this crazy idea of man versus beer.
Oh no! Oh no!
Yeah. So we thought the most widely available beer to us at a high ABV that tasted pretty decent was Duvel.
Yeah.
Is it 8%, 10%?
Yeah, it's about 8%. Yeah, they do like a single hopped one as well, or a mixture of 3 new hops as well, don't they?
Yeah.
They did one with Sriracha Ace. Have you come across Sriracha Ace hop?
It's a lovely beers.
Yeah.
So we decided to do. There was 3 channels involved. I got them all on StreamYard. I hosted it, and I was very confident I was going to do it. 10 bottles of Duvel. 10. The beer versus man versus beer. 10 bottles of Duvel.
No, Simon. No.
Mark, the beer hooligan, right? I got the 7, and people have made all sorts of gifts. You know, the silly little gifts on the end. They made all sorts of gifts. So by 7, I've got a sink in front of me here. I was hanging onto the sink by 7.
No, bad idea. Bad idea from start to finish, one.
Really bad.
And Duvel was a lovely beer, but not after 8 of them.
Well, the star of the show was the beer hooligan.
Yeah.
He drank 10. He drank his allocation is 10 bottles of Duvel. Then he opened a quad, a Belgian quad at 12%. And then I think at the end he collapsed on a like some kind of crazy 14%.
No.
But he did the whole. He went past the 10 Duvals. But I remember the other guy who we had on. We were texting each other the next day, like how I didn't move till 2:00 in the afternoon. I was stuck on the sofa after seven bottles of Duvel. I was stuck on the sofa all day long.
No, Simon.
We decided that the man versus beer was a good thing.
Yes, but you were wrong.
We were totally wrong.
Yeah.
But the worst thing about it you see all these people eating 12 burgers and whatever.
Yeah.
The worst thing about the whole situation was that we started having all the ethical questions about whether you should have done that in the first place. But then I always say to myself, should you be eating blooming 6 burgers? Is that
no, you shouldn't be eating 6 burgers either. I think that's an easy answer.
Yeah.
Don't eat 6 burgers either.
Yeah, exactly that. So we had this whole argument then with the ethical group saying, should you even be doing that type of thing on the internet? And
No, you shouldn't.
So I'm going to try my first sip of triple knot. I've not even read the...
No, so this is you might have tried this before, Sam. I can't remember if we sent it to you before.
Yeah, I have.
So this was essentially a sort of a recreation of beer we did for a sort of anniversary at the brewery, which we did in a big 750ml bottle. We aged it in tank for about 6 months to try and get some of that bready note from the yeast. So as the yeast sort of starts to die, basically, you get a little bit of this bready note. So aged in tank for 6 months to get that bready note. It's really about the yeast, this beer. But we also wanted a little bit of some of those flavors you get in champagne. So you get a little bit of lavender sometimes from some of those champagne yeasts. So we put a little bit of lavender in as well. And then when we recreated it for this beer, we added a little bit of orange blossom as well and some jasmine. So you get a bit of floral note. You get a bit of honey, a bit of bready, that sort of brioche sort of bready note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite sweet as well.
It's sweet. Yeah, I mean it's that sort of triple style, so it has quite a lot of sweetness as well.
Nice. Again.
Yeah. It's a sipper.
I love that about beer. I can't even put that into words. You know that little rock, and you see that cat. I can't even put that into words. I love that. I love that about beer.
Yeah. It's got that sort of silky sweetness to it, I think. So it has that really nice sort of silky honey sweetness to it.
It does. Is there a lot of honey in there?
No, there's no honey at all. There's no honey at all in it. That's purely that interaction of the yeast and that sweetness. So it gives you that sort of brioche honeyed note.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I would have swore there was honey in there.
No, there's not a drop. We have made honey beers in the past, and we have our own rescue honeybees up at the distribution centre. But no honey has been put into that beer.
Oh, it's fabulous. We are into the last 19 minutes of our live feed. It's been wonderful. It's flown by, as always. Is there anything that you would like to touch on, Fergus, before the end? Because it'll quickly vanish, but we're drinking this triple.
I would like to get reassurance, Simon, that you're not going to attempt to recreate the Duvel Gate.
No.
That's what I would like to get reassurance on that. I can have a quick look through. I think we've talked about quite a lot of things, but if there's anything in particular anyone wants to throw up quickly that we can talk about, then obviously we can do that.
The hooligan has said he met you at your brewery in 2018.
Well, thank you. I do remember that. Depends who the hooligan is. I'm presuming that's not his real name. But someone wants to know where we get our barley from. So if people don't know where East Anglia is, it's sort of essentially it's Suffolk and Norfolk really is what we would define as East Anglia. And thankfully, this part of the world is quite well known for growing barley. So all of our malted barley comes from Suffolk and Norfolk through growers that we know. So we say, we give them sort of 3 years sort of contracts and say you're going to grow for us for the next 3 years, providing the weather and the harvest allows them to. But yeah, so all pretty local to the actual to the brewery itself, which we're lucky to be in this region to be able to do that. Why should he pledge only to... Someone wants to know... Holt Mark wants to know why you should pledge only to drink Adnams over Christmas. It helps my pension, which is obviously nice for me. I
got a good one from Troy McClure, and he says, Adnams, Fuller's, great breweries, but not considered #craft, therefore not trendy, but get my dosh every time. I see it, and this is just my point of view. the Germans, the Belgians brew terrific beer, but the craft market can't get any traction. Yes, the craft market has got traction in the UK, massive traction, but I still think the regional breweries have got something really special to offer. They've got. I've been down to Shepherd-Neame and you guys down in Adnams, and you've got brewery books where you can go through hundreds of years of history to go through your back catalogue and just pull out some wonderful beers. And that's the difference from a craft brewery. Yeah. Craft breweries can't really do that, can they?
No, but I think history is great and tradition is great. So it gives you a sort of foundation, I guess. But you can't. I think where some breweries go wrong is you can't just rely on that, because if you do, you'll disappear.
Oh yeah,
so, I think you still have to keep looking to do something new. And the analogy I used to use, what you had to be. It doesn't really work anymore because she doesn't really produce records anymore. But you had to be like Madonna. You know, Madonna kept reinventing herself every few years to try and keep current. You still had the history, you still had that talent, but you kept reinventing herself. And any brewery that still wants to stay around has to keep doing that. If you only ever do what you did before, then the next generation of drinkers who want something slightly different will go somewhere else. So I think you still have to keep trying something new. Not all of it work. And I think you just have to accept that some of the new things you try, in fact, most of the new things people try don't work and don't stick. But eventually you get to the thing that people do like. And you sort of need to let drinkers decide what it is they want. Yeah. I think trying to decide for them is where you get into trouble. I think let them decide what they want. If that's successful, you back that and you keep going with that. But at the same time, keep trying something new somewhere else.
Exactly that. I've never seen Adnams put a beer in a clear glass bottle or the green glass bottle. It's never happened. But again, of course, I don't expect you to comment too much on this because, of course, a lot of friends involved. But you see regional breweries doing the same thing. They're putting beer in clear glass bottles and green glass bottles. And you almost want to go down there and give them a blooming good shake. You want to shake them and go, come on.
Don't shake the bottles. God.
Yeah, don't shake the bottles. But
worse. Yeah, but I think I guess when you get into brewing, you start understanding why some of the things like clear glass can be bad for beer. I think we sometimes lose sight of why other people like it. So the thing that's bad with putting beer into clear glass is it changes. There's a chemical change when sunlight hits hops and it creates something what we call skunky, but sort of tastes slightly rubbery. But actually, if you ask most people to taste that beer, they would actually describe it in pretty favorable terms. So as brewers, we look at it and think it's a fault and taste it and we think, oh, that's bad. But actually, lots of people who drink beer will taste it and go, oh, no, I quite like that. It gives me happy memories of sitting in a pub garden where the sunlight's skunking your beer while you're sitting there. So we can get a bit hung up into what we think is right, but we still have to remember what's right for the customer. Now, having said that, I don't like skunky beer, so we don't put beer into clear glass. Yeah. But I would always be careful of judging other breweries that do, because actually, if they're doing it because they think it's better for their customer in whatever way, they can justify that. But I think I need to be careful about sort of always saying that this flavor is bad or this flavor is good. Sometimes flavors can be both bad and good depending on who's drinking them. Yeah,
perfect kind of answer. That's exactly what I was expecting. No. I mean, there are some breweries that actually brew a beer with a little bit of diacetyl in to get that butterscotch taste, because the people who buy the beer are used to that flavour, they're used to that taste. And yes, for us purists, us professionals, we see it as it's an off flavour. I can't drink that just because it's an off flavour. Yeah. There's breweries out there that go, we're selling this beer. We're going to carry on doing it. We're going to cut the date of the beer by 3 days, or the brewing process, and get it out there.
Yeah, and I know one brewery in particular who have a beer that usually has some good diacetyl levels on it, and they did lots of work to try and get rid of it. and actually they had complaints coming back to say, actually, this doesn't taste right anymore. So brewers normally would look at a beer or taste a beer that's got diacetyl and say it's wrong. But actually, for particular beers where you've grown up with them, or you've been drinking it for 20 years, I think you need to be careful about changing those beers, because those beers don't really belong to you anymore as a brewer. They belong to the people who drink them, not you. So if you're going to mess with them, you need to be really careful about it, because that's not your beer. That's the beer that however many people drink it, that's their beer, the beer that they've drunk for 20 years.
Yeah.
So you need to be really careful about doing things like
that. I promise this is my last technical question of the night. We got 10 minutes to go.
You can't fit in 8 Duvels. That's the end of it. Okay.
My technical question of the night would be, only because I answer it in a certain way every time, and I'm very aware that I'm wrong, but I'm not a brewer. I'm just somebody who drinks beer. My understanding of diacetyl is that you've cut the brew short and it's not had time to ferment properly. But there's other answers to it, isn't there? And sorry for being technical for this time of night, but if you could answer.
No, it's not necessarily. So it's not necessarily that beer's been cut short, but so diacetyl is made by yeast, but in the early part of fermentation. But then it will mop up that diacetyl towards the end of fermentation and change it to something else. So you've got 2 types of diacetyl. You've got fermentation diacetyl, which is sort of about whether the yeast has been in good health and whether you've given it enough time to change that diacetyl back. But you've also got diacetyl that's made from which I think people knew in the early 1900s, but seemed to forget for 80 years or so. But you can get diacetyl that's made from hops. So basically, some hops have enzymes in there which will break down some complex sugars into easy fermentable sugars. Right. The yeast then ferments those easy fermentable sugars again that weren't there before, but will do again, and then they make new diacetyl, and then they don't have time to mop up that diacetyl. So there's two sort of ways of getting diacetyl.
Right. So it's the hops that
yeah. So dry hopping, heavy dry hopping late, and while it's still warm, particularly, and then not giving the beer enough time or the yeast enough time, or even if there's not enough yeast left in there, that can create it. So, and I think it seems to have changed over the last few years as well, that as we get better at picking hops that are fresher and kept better in better conditions, are then making more of this enzyme which will break the starch down or make those complex sugars into simple sugars again. So it is something that's been cropping up for the last few years about more and more issues with diacetyl later on in the process. So it's not always an easy fix, actually.
It's brilliant. Thank you for that, and thank you for everybody who's listening to. You always hear me talking about, and only because it's like layman's terms. It's like very, very. I only ever go into simplistic terms when it comes to beer, but I always say that it's the cutoff point. Only because I've heard it from so many brewers where it's been cut short and then you create that. I never knew what was blooming going on really, but yeah. I'm glad you've kind of given it out to people in a specific way.
Yeah, and also different yeast strains will create more. So some yeast strains can create very little at all anyway. So they have less mopping up to do, but some create lots. Yeah,
we're 8 minutes out, or 7 minutes out from the end. I've thoroughly enjoyed my night. I've drunk some terrific beers. We didn't even get to Ghost Ship or Explorer. It would be a real crying shame if we went back to that now. It would
drink it tomorrow.
Exactly. It's been amazing. I'd love to thank Beers of Europe who set this up. Adnams for joining us. We've had a great relationship over the years. Normally, with a small micro, we'll say to them, if you were to brew a collaboration with us, what would we brew? Can we do the same with you guys? If with 7 minutes to go, it's late in the day, but if you wanted ever in the future Adnams and Real Ale Craft Beer to brew a collaboration together, what would it be?
Well, what would it be, Simon? Would it be quadruple Duvel? So you can just have one?
No, it would be something. It would definitely something broadside.
What's 8 times? It's not what's an octuplet Duvel.
Paul's beer reviews. This has been really good tonight, lads. We'll definitely explore the Adnams range a bit more. Cheers. That's what we want. That's what we want. I don't see Adnams as a regional brewer. I've mentioned it a few times, regional breweries, but I don't. This is my message. I don't see Adnams as a regional brewer. They might be a regional brewer, but they've always been a brewery that has been on the leading edge of being a regional brewer. Does that make sense? We
try and do new things. You know, we try not to keep doing the same things all the time because, like I said, you need to keep looking to see what you can do and where the beer world is going. You can't just stay where you were 40, 50 years ago. You have to keep looking. So if I'll probably do a quick plug, www.adnams.co.uk, go and buy some beer. Oh, and some whiskey. Buy some whiskey.
I'd say some. I'd love to do some Imperial Porter or Imperial Stout with you guys. If it was ever invited, if it ever comes through in the future, I could come down and drink, even just to go to the pub with you, Fergus. Beer with you. You know, even never got round to brewing the collaboration, but I would say definitely I'd love to brew an Imperial Stout or an Imperial Porter.
Yeah, I think what we want. I think one of the things we really want to do, which is a weird thing that we never really have, as far as we can tell in our history, is done a proper English IPA, which I know, like a proper 6% English hopped, juicy, but juicy with that sort of English character to it. That's one of the things I think we would like to do, and we do some IPA. So we do the New England IPA, we do Innovation, which is sort of a wheaty IPA. We do Crystal Rye, which is a sort of rye IPA, but they're very much sort of American influenced sort of beers. And I think what we'd really like to do is something that has that really nice English character. And I think there is growing interest in some of those historic styles. I think that sort of have lost their way a little bit.
You've led me to one last question. Sorry, Phil. One last question. Has there ever been a British hop that has even closely resembled an American juicy?
Yes. I think it is really difficult because we have clearly a different climate. But you have some of the newer hops like some Ernest and Jester and Harlequin. They've got some really nice fruit characteristics to them. Not maybe more Australian than probably US. So a bit more of those sort of uses. I think trying to get those flavors into the beer is still a challenge because they have other flavors, some more of the sort of what we sort of sulfur compounds that are quite typical in hops as well. As well as the fruit, they get more of those. So I think it's a work in progress, but things like Harlequin are showing really great promise. So I think those hops are the things that are probably going to stand out in the next couple of years. And there's still more work going on, so there's more breeding programs going on to try and get those fruit characteristics.
Turn on all the patio heaters. Let's ramp up global warming. We'll have some great British hops in the future.
That's right. We'll be able to grow Citra all over Norfolk.
Yeah, exactly that. Fergus, it's been amazing. Thank you so much, honestly, for joining us, for answering everything so openly, and it's been wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Good. Simon, you promised me about the Duvels. It's never going to happen again, is it?
No, never. Maybe Good. On the Beer Hooligans channel. No. It was a good idea in the summer. We thought there's a lot of beer. You see these guys pummeling hot dogs down, and we thought, that can't be good for you. That can't. So maybe we'll just try and drink 10 beers.
It's not good for you either.
It wasn't good for us. No. I was literally. People said I was hanging on by my fingernails on the thing.
On the screen had frozen.
Yeah, yeah, it was good stuff. It was really good stuff. So one more question. 2021 Adnams. What have you got going on? If you can give us anything. Can we visit pubs? Can we have a meal? Any beers? Go for it.
Yeah, so definitely you can come visit the pubs. We'll take you to the Swan, which is the hotel right at the back of the brewery, which has got a really great brewery tap now. So what else are we doing? So next year, so I think we will do some more collaboration brews. So it got a bit cut short this year. So we'll continue a few more collaborations that we wanted to do this year into next year. Partly sort of celebrating Ghost Ship's 10 years, but sort of as a wider thing as well. I think next year is really about getting cask ale back in a sort of groove again.
Yeah.
I think coming from Ireland, cask ale was a complete novelty when I first came over, but cask ale was sort of the thing that made me fall in love with beer and brewing. So that's one of the things I really want to get back to, and hopefully we can get cask beer back on the bar and get people enjoying it again.
Yeah. I'm really sorry. I'm going to ask one more question, only because it's led into one question to another question. I promise we'll end now in the next minute or so. Is that, and I wanted to ask this earlier on in the night without me sounding paralytic, but has anything like this ever happened in the brewing industry before?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing. It's been crazy. A crazy 2020. Fergus, honestly, thank you so much. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to end the broadcast. Thank you to beersofeurope.co.uk for being our wonderful channel sponsors for the last 8 or 9 years. I didn't use 5 or 6 then. I used 8 or 9.
Good.
But thank you, Beers of Europe. Please check out Adnams Brewery. For me, nothing's mundane. From the Lighthouse, it's malty and biscuity. And it's only 3.4% or 3.6% ABV. 3.4. It's really malty and biscuity all the way up to the Tally Ho, which is a fantastic barley wine. Check these guys out. Brilliant beer. I totally recommend them. Thanks for watching, and cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.